All right, let's do this.
All right, good evening. I am Mary Sullivan, City of Darien Alderperson for Ward 5. I serve as the chairperson of the Administrative and Finance Committee. I would like to call to order our Committee of the Whole meeting today. With all city alderpersons, our mayor, city administrator, our police chief, and senior staff present, we will review, discuss, conduct Q&A, and come to a consensus on the fiscal year 2021 budget that has been a collaborative effort with Mayor Marquez, City Administrator Vanna, and city staff. I will serve as tonight's facilitator. Tonight is the second meeting in a series of meetings with the end goal being to have a public hearing on the budget and the city council vote to approve on Monday, April 6th. I plan to conclude tonight's meeting at 9 p.m. The next committee as a whole meeting will be held next Tuesday, March 3rd at 6:30 p.m. in council chambers. At this time, we hope to complete the city's fiscal year 2021 budget review. However, if that does not happen, another meeting will take place on Tuesday, March 10th. Last week, on February 19th, we covered the general fund revenue and expenses, which included the following budgets: City Council, Administrative, and Community Development. Tonight, we will start off with the Police Department's budget, and we have Chief Thomas present to answer any questions. After that, we will dive into municipal services with Dan Gombeck and Chris Throm present to answer questions. The architecture firm ARIA will be in attendance at next week's meeting to share their analysis on the municipal services, garage, and facilities on South Frontage Road. We will hold off discussing any line items pertinent to this area until next week. This falls in capital projects. All city council members received hard copies of the fiscal year 2021 budget, along with summary pages and supporting documents dated on February 10th. All of this information has been published in the City of Darien website. These meetings are broadcasted on Channel 6 and will be available for viewing at the City of Darien website. So to get started, I'm going to see if Treasurer Corrin has anything he would like to add about tonight's meeting.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Don't go too far.
We'll put that on pause. Next up, Administrator Vanna, do you have anything you'd like to add as we start off the evening?
No, just I'm keeping a running tab on any changes made at the meetings or any adjustments I have. And after tonight, I'll update that and send those out, probably for the whatever final meeting we have, and then we'll recap and go over anything, any loose ends.
Okay, great. If that being said, Chief Thomas, do you want to start off saying anything about the police department's budget before we start going through it?
No, I have come tonight with a budget that totals $8,322,353. About 89% of that is for salary and benefits. That doesn't leave very much for operations. In fact, if you look at operations, it's a little bit more than $900,000. But a lot of that is through DUCOM, which saves a lot of money. Merit, which provides for a lot of different things that we would normally have to purchase or pay for. SWAT, accident reconstruction, canine, additional investigators, and the like. So if you looked at all those contractual items, if we had to pay for the actual person or body to do that, the personnel costs would rise to about 94% of the overall budget. So it's a good looking budget, I think, and I'm ready to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much, Chief. Okay, well, I am currently looking at City of Darien Municipal Services. No, that's not the wrong one. I'm sorry. I had that one pulled out, and I had opened to the wrong page.
Thanks for moving on, Mary.
Yeah, yeah. There we go. City of Darien Police Department budget. I got ahead of myself there. Okay. We are looking at, this document is dated, now my spreadsheet is dated 2/5/2020.
Same.
Same, everyone else? Okay, because I had said in my opening 2/10. Okay, I'm also looking at summary page number 40. Okay, great.
Can we go back to 39? Maybe I did, maybe I should have spoken up sooner.
Okay, starting off, Chief, I think, did a good recap of the overall salaries, benefits, costs, what we save with our contractual agreements.
Oh, Mary? I'm sorry, I was serious this time.
We're ser-
On page 39, there's a few things I'd like to point out or question a little bit.
39.
Cover page, the cover page?
The summary, the cover page.
Okay,
Spreadsheet.
okay. I'm sorry.
What I do
Oh,
is...
I thought you meant summary page 39.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, you're just talking about the overall spreadsheet.
Right.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. The first thing I do when I get this, I mean, I do compare the numbers that are being projected and where we stand currently in that, and I've come up with just a few differences, so I do want to basically staff make them aware, this way they can make any adjustments as we go toward final, preparation of the final budget. The first item is the police pension. The budgeted amount showing up $1,714,000, and Chief, you're showing the estimated actual $1,719,000. We're already at $1,728,000, so we're about $9,000 higher than that. We collect the real estate taxes through December 31st, so that will be a solid final number for the end of the fiscal year. As Brian knows, they always assess about 1 or 2% more for uncollectibles, but the $1,728,000 is where that number should finally come in. We've actually gotten the statement from the county reflecting that amount. Also down below on printing and forms, projecting budgeted 1,500, projecting 3,155. Again, as of the end of January, we're already exceeding that a little bit. It's $3,674, and I would assume we'll probably have a little bit more going forward. Not a big deal there. One thing I pointed out last week, again, I just wanted to make the council aware, the police pension, just about 9 or 10 line items down. You see what we were just talking about. I said it's going to come in at $1,728,000. As you go out to year 3, this is an item that I mentioned last week. You see it's projected at $2,368,100. Depending where the actuarial numbers come out, that's what Brian is projecting. Just want to make sure everyone recalls last week when we were talking about this, currently we levy approximately $2.2 million in real estate taxes. So by year 3, the police pension is going to exceed 100. We're going to levy, basically everything we levy is going to be going to the police pension fund, which is not a problem, but up until now, we've been able to keep our real estate tax levy the same. But by year 3, real estate taxes are going to have to go up just to cover that one particular item, aside from the other transfers that we make for capital projects and things like that. Then I just had one other question for Chief on uniforms, Chief. Current year estimated actual $52,000, then the next couple years $53,000, but then in year 3 it decreasing down to $49,000. Just unusual to see decreases and that type of thing. I know those are contractual typically, aside from SWAT vests and everything, but I was surprised to see that decrease by about $4,000 in year 3.
On what? On uniforms.
Didn't want you to have it too easy tonight.
I'd have to look. You're correct in that in the last negotiations, we moved everybody, all the sworn personnel, to a flat $900, and so might take that times. So that portion is correct, but there's other items within that uniform allowance, and one is the safety vests. So and that's also a reimbursed cost. So it's not just our outlay. It's reimbursed usually by half by the feds. So we don't replace all those vests every year. So that number fluctuates, and that particular year the vests go down by about $4,000, a little bit more than $4,000.
That's fine. I just want to make sure that you address it. Thank you.
I was trying to find that sheet.
Mary? Just one thing, under vehicle, gas, and oil, our budget is $75,000 usually. This year, we came in at $89,490. Is that because gas was up this year? I'm just curious on that one. We normally budget 75.
They're showing 52,000.
You mean last year, in the audited
I'm
fiscal
Sorry, my
year?
apologies,
Actual.
you're right. Okay, 52,000. So the point is that we always budget for $3 per gallon is what we usually go with, correct? From what I remember?
No, it's not. It's approximately $2.50, I believe it is.
That's what we're budgeting for per gallon? Okay, my apologies, thank you.
Yes, Tom.
Quick question on rental equipment. In 2019, we used 1,600, and then we're asking for from the department 2,800, but the request is 5,800, and we've used 5,500 budget this year. Is that what's the? Do we have more rentals, or is it vehicles, or where does that go? Or is it
There's
barricades?
two items under rentals, and we have, I think it's 3,000 or so for barricades and different pieces of equipment that we may have to rent in case of some type of emergency. Very infrequently, we need to use that line item, and but there are times that we have had to use it.
Okay, thanks.
Range.
Are you good, Mike?
I'm sorry, and then
I'm
just
sorry,
to complete that thought, the range, it's 3,000, and that's pretty consistent. But the other one is the incidental rentals that fluctuate.
Mike, you good? I'm paying attention to now.
I'm
Okay.
on that page.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Chief at this time? Okay. So we will move on to page 40. I was trying to get ahead of myself there. And we're just going to, go down the areas, and I'm just going to, if there's any opposition, please speak up. Otherwise, we'll assume that there's a consensus and keep moving on, okay? So under item 40-4010, salaries.
I have.
Yes.
Sorry. Jump into this page. Chief, on this page, the records clerk salary is $250,786. That's the same exact dollar amount as last year. I would have thought that everybody got nominal increases or something.
Yes, let me grab that.
It's about $400 more than last year, Mike. Last year it was $20,563. This year it's
No,
$20,907.
the first line item, records clerk, 250.
250, 786, 4 people.
Oh,
Same exact number.
oh, okay. You get 4 of them. All right.
We'll just have to check that. It's all contractual, so we'll just verify.
Right, I would think so. That's why I
Okay.
was just surprised to see it at the same.
$2,000
Same.
Okay.
Last year records clerk for 4 was $65,520.
No, first line item, 250, 786.
Okay. So you'll verify that?
Yeah, we'll review that.
Okay, no problem. That's been brought to the attention. So, salary civilians is $451,996. Moving down to item 40-4020, salaries officers, $3,827,644. Moving down to 40-4030, overtime, for a total of $476,554. I had, obviously asked the question if, we're, at this point, we're proceeding, that Darien Fest is happening, and we're going to keep that in there, that 16,000. And then if,
Until we hear differently.
so, yeah,
I'm sorry, yeah, until we hear differently from the
Okay.
chamber, yeah.
for a total of overtime of $476,554. Is there any discussion on that? Okay.
I guess the question, why don't we just move K-9 to basically, just, maintenance budget requests instead of discretionary? I'm just curious on that. Just,
I think it's just been a traditional thing to have it under discretionary. It's been there since I've been here. I'm
Not a big
wondering
deal one way or another.
yeah, it's always been allowed or gone.
Exactly.
And if we're going to have a K-9, then you're going to have that. If you're not going to pay the overtime, then we're going to have to.
well, and that's the whole point,
Discretion.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
okay. Thanks, Chief.
Chief, could you just mention we are switching canines this year? It'll be a little overlap.
Yeah, I was going to leave that but under other costs that we were going to use the federal forfeiture funds for, but the NICO turns 10 in the fiscal year 2021, and so he'll be replaced. But we will use federal forfeiture funds for that, but for a time, we'll probably have both canines for a while, plus Nico is getting up in age and getting more veterinary bills, so there's a little bit increase in vet bills, training and the like for canines in the budget. You'll see that.
Are we going to have two different police officers in charge of the canines, or one police officer in charge of both canines? Just out of curiosity.
No, the canines are assigned to per officer, so
Okay,
there'll be
gotcha.
2 canine officers. It'll be a very short time. I just don't know how much time it'll take us to look at that new canine and say, yeah, we're good to go, and
Okay.
it's time to retire Nico.
Gotcha.
Should be a fairly short time, I would think.
Cool.
On a side note, what happens when a canine retires? Where does Nico go?
That's an exception to the federal forfeiture rules. Generally, you cannot make a personal donation, but they have an exception, so it goes to the canine handler.
Okay.
Just to keep the dog as a pet.
Okay, thanks for sharing. The audience might want to know that. Okay. Under benefits, any questions under benefits? Okay, obviously, majority of all that is contract related. Okay, operating. Animal control, 404201. Auxiliary police, 40-4203.
Quick question for you, Chief.
Yes,
If
sir.
you don't mind. Animal control, I always was under the impression that goes to that's a county that takes care of our animal control. Yes, no?
Yeah, they charge us for it. And then we charge the homeowner. So if we go get a bat, if we do recover a canine and pay that fee, we get reimbursed for that fee. So it's, the 1,500 is fairly much a pass-through.
Thank you.
Good question. Boards and commission, 40-4205.
This one has a significant jump. The police sergeant's test is given every third year. The police officer candidate test to get a list of eligible candidates is given every other year. And for fiscal year 2021, they both come due. So that's why that big jump. And then following year, there'll be none. So that 20,000, I think it is a short-term thing.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Any questions there? Okay. Dues and subscriptions, 40-4213. Investigation and equipment, 40-4217. Liability insurance, 40-4219. Maintenance equipment, 40-4225.
I had a question on one item there, Chief. We've got a new item, iTouch maintenance, $3,000.
Yes, it's iTouch is the fingerprinting system. We bought that 3 years ago with federal forfeiture funds. We prepaid maintenance, and this is the first year that we'll have to pay maintenance on that system.
My secondary question is, I would assume we seem to be setting up a lot of new accounts that are restricted in terms of these forfeiture funds, and as far as the amounts we're getting, you're being as aggressive as you can, I would imagine, in trying to utilize those and making as many payments as possible. It does seem like those amounts are increasing, and
For the most part, generally, the federal forfeiture funds are not going to pay reoccurring costs.
right.
So we were able to purchase and build into that purchase 3 years maintenance, but at some point in time, it's going to have to come to purchase. So
Just looking for confirmation from you that you're doing all you can in terms of using those funds for
try to, for certainly.
other items.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Chief, can you take about 30 seconds just to explain federal forfeiture funds in case someone in the audience listening that doesn't know what that is?
Certainly. It actually happens at the federal level and the state level. Both of them allow for the seizure of property under certain circumstances, under certain crimes. that property, whether it's cash or cars or some other type of property, has to go through a civil process where the state's attorney represents the city in the process, and will then what's called forfeit the money. So if we seize a car, we go through a civil process, the car is then forfeited, which then we have possession of that car. Cars are odd, we have to keep those for a year before we can sell them, or we can use them right away. Cash, same thing. We seize it, we put it in a bank, we tell the state that we've seized it, goes through that same process through the state's attorney's office for forfeiture. Then once it's forfeited, then we put it into an account that we can actually spend it. And it happens at both the state and federal level. With the number of changes in the process, I think we've used state forfeiture. We've seized money under state forfeiture, I think twice in the 4 years I've been here now, but we continue to use the federal forfeiture with our officer that's assigned to the task force. In fact, this year I think we got about $190,000, or not this 2019, we got about $190,000 through that process.
Excellent. Thank you for the explanation. Tom?
One quick question. What's the leads online under 40-4217 investigation and equipment? Line
Yeah,
item
it's a software that we pay for. It's used in a number of places. So anytime that somebody sells property to a resale shop, a pawn shop, a iron collection service, any of those, they have to take a picture and register the item that they've purchased. And then we use that system we use it all the time, but every so often we'll go in there and look for any items that were sold that matches any property that was stolen out of any burglary, theft, or anything like that.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Maintenance of vehicles, 40-4229. Okay, 40-4233, postage mailings, 40-4235, printing and forms.
Question for you.
Sure.
So we just did a mailing on this fiscal year budget that you just sent out. Are you anticipating anything further, that kind of thing in the future? And if so, does that number would that number need to be up?
I can't remember what the mailings came into. I know that I just used the regular postage amount, but I know when we went through the bid process, they knocked off 18 cents per bulk mailing and all these different types of things. So I think the final price came in at 23. Is that right? 20, somewhere around there. I don't anticipate that occurring again, just because we're going to that newsletter and we'd be able to get that out quarterly. So I think it's much more efficient to put more information in the newsletter than to have individual letters being sent out.
Okay, just rather ask now than
Absolutely.
than later. Okay.
I understand that element.
Okay. Moving on to public relations, 40-4239. Okay. Rent equipment, 40-4243. Supplies, office, 40-53. Okay. Training and education, 4263. I'm going to drop the 40 since make it talk faster.
I'm going to take a quick pause there.
Sure.
Chief, again on this, well, I noticed we're up from about $32,000 last year to about $39,000 or so this year, and some of it isn't discretionary. Once again, is any of that eligible to be used for any of the seized funds?
No, those are all, the reason it went up was because of the state mandated training that they put in place, I think in 2017 2017. And so there was a number of classes that had to be done right away. And then the repeat classes, there's some that repeat every year. There's some that repeat every other year. There's some that repeat every third year. And so there's timing that this 2021 is a repeat of a number of classes. So that's why it went up by, I think, about $6,000. For the most part, those are reoccurring costs and very hard to justify federal forfeiture funds as versus one of the big rules is supplanting and supplementing. And feds definitely want to make sure that you are supplementing your budget, not supplanting any budget items.
Has there been anything additional required as a result of the authorization of cannabis, the legalization of cannabis that's included in there?
Yeah, the state offers this DRE program, drug recognition enforcement. Very difficult class to get into and very expensive class, so that's included in there as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
And the state does not give any money to jurisdictions, municipalities to subsidize the cost by these mandates?
No, but that's a great point that you brought up, and I appreciate it. Trying to find it. It's probably under new officers. It requires us to pay for new officers. So when they go to the Suburban Law Enforcement Academy, the state training board always gave us a reimbursement. It used to be 100%, then it went down to 75, went down to 50%. For a time, it bounced back up to full reimbursement. We got notice probably about 2 months ago, maybe less, that they're going to cut out all reimbursement because they're not getting funded anymore. So that'll be our cost. That used to be a pass-through. We used to pay for it and then get reimbursed at the end of the year. We'll no longer get that reimbursement.
Greg, on Friday at the seminar I went to, there was a session on how cannabis impacts police departments. There was an officer, I forget his name, but he's a 30-year veteran who's very involved in all the legislation. And he made a comment that said that there's a portion of the revenue that the state gets that will go automatically to police training. I don't know what that amount is. I don't know what the vehicle is for getting it to the police, if it's an individual department thing or if it's by the state. But he said there will be money allocated from the revenues the state receives for police training.
Yeah, and I think that a timing matter where some of the money that was being taken from traffic tickets to fund the state training board, it's gone. And I think in the lieu of that, the cannabis might be used to replace that funding mechanism. But those two are not in sync yet.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry.
I have one recommendation, Chief. I think when we send new officers for training, we send them to the academy, and I believe the acronym for it is the SLEAP Academy, SLEAP.
There's no P. SLEA, Suburban Law Enforcement Academy.
I think doesn't everybody refer to that as a SLEAP Academy?
That's actually the first I've heard of it.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So we're clear, Mike, the Sleep Academy is located in Ward 5 along Frontage Road, and
Yeah.
law enforcers are not
That's a
being
good place to
trained.
go to as well.
We're always looking for people that need to get tased for training.
Yeah.
Chief, your name now.
Would you like us to add your name to the list, Treasurer Corrin, as a,
Academy
I think
as an,
baton,
as a candidate?
tomorrow's
You might
baton
want to
training.
specify which one.
Gotta have some fun at these things.
Exactly.
We most definitely do, and I have chocolate-covered almonds, so eat those and let's have fun.
I know why
Okay.
those vests are so expensive. They come with pillows too, right?
Okay, moving on to, any more questions on training and education? Okay. 4265, travel meetings.
Quick question. We budgeted 13,250 last year. It looks like we spent 8,000. I don't know if Mike can clarify. And we're raising it this year, and then it seems like we're going back down. Is there something going on this year that's causing it to be higher?
There's the only one that I know that got added back in was the IACP, International Association of Chiefs of Police. I didn't attend in 2019. I'm going to attend this year. So there's a little bit of an expense there.
And is that something that's only every couple of years, or?
It's every year. Every year I opted not to go in 2019.
Are we spending 8,000 this year on that? Just out of curiosity.
They're projecting 8,000 right now. It's at about 29.
Okay.
I believe 2,950 year to date. Or
Chief, where's
for
it at
January.
this year, by the way?
Pardon?
Where's it at this year?
New Orleans.
It hasn't happened yet, right? Is that why we haven't
It's
seen?
October.
That was the one that was in Orlando last year, wasn't it, correct?
Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, Orlando the year before.
Orlando was the year before, okay.
Do you have any more questions, Tom?
No.
Okay. 4267 telephone. 4269 uniforms. 4271 utilities. 4273 vehicle. Under contractual services, 4325 consulting professional services.
Again, Chief, we've got the new item, crime analyst consulting services. Again, just looking whether we can use these funds for that or what, and what it is. It's something new.
It is new. During the last, started October 30th with the res burglaries, and so started to do a bunch of crime analyst work, and a friend from Aurora said that she would do it for us. She's a crime analyst, so she did it free. Gave us all the information about day of the week, time of day, day of the week, hour of the day, location, method of operation, and different things like that. So talked to Brian and felt that that was probably a pretty good deal for us. We used to have a full-time crime analyst that between salary and benefits was about $70,000, and that was cut. Some of that work is still important to do, and typically I've been doing it, or one of the sergeants doing it, or a detective doing it. I think that we can hire that out for get it done more efficiently and beneficially for us.
Nothing we could use these funds for.
Usually not for contractual services, but I can double check for sure.
Thank you.
Mhm.
4337 Dumag Fiat Child Center. Merritt Children's Center, Dumag. Okay. And lastly, capital purchases. 4815 equipment.
Someone should discuss that new item on there.
The grant for the lights.
The
Grants?
I asked,
Yep.
I asked Greg to put
There's
this
some
in.
backup too, gentlemen.
Right.
On page 44, there's an explanation a little bit, but I think someone should definitely, Joe, you want to mayor my case?
I asked Greg to put this in the budget. Brian and I talked about it. We were looking at at encouraging people to purchase outdoor cameras that would be made available to the police if there was a incident in that community where they could show a playback which might impact the police department finding a criminal. And we haven't detailed the specifics of that. We would begin it in May, but we were looking at reimbursing a resident for $100 of the purchase of an outdoor camera, not an entire security system, but an outdoor camera.
Is that including the Ring doorbells?
I don't know.
I think Ring doorbells does have a camera system with that. So and they're actually pretty decent on residential burglaries when people are coming up, knocking on the door, ringing the doorbell, usually with a clipboard or something in their hand, just as a ruse to see if anybody's home, and then they'll go around back and deal with that. So I think we need to flush all those things out. But I think that for me, I think a Ring doorbell would in fact qualify. Also, Brian sent me information about a grant, and I think that was up to $10,000 as well. So I don't remember if it was ComEd or another. Was it ComEd? From ComEd, and there's actually 3 items in there, and one was for safety. So it's due, I think, mid to late March, and so I was looking at that to put that in there. So may be able to do it through a grant funding versus the budget process.
We still find people with the ruse clipboard when they walk up and they see the Ring doorbell, and they're still walking up to it.
I got a couple of videos that I could show you that they walk up
Oh, no,
and
I believe-
then turn around and leave. Sometimes they don't even don't ring the bell. They just leave.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask. Okay.
I think the important part to
definitely a
remember,
giant
though, this is if we give them the reimbursement for part of their purchase, we would want them to sign on and register it with the Darien Police, so the police knew that they have it. For instance, mine is, I have a dedicated Nest outdoor camera, and it catches the corner of everything that comes in and out of my subdivision, and I have a 5-day look back on it. And if we had something in our area, the officers could come, I could play that back and show them there was a car that went by. During the day, it's much easier to see, although at night, I still get a pretty clear picture, but that's what we're really looking to do, is to give them an opportunity to access that. We're not saying the police have automatic access to it. They have to ask the resident to look at the look back.
But in order to receive the $100, you would need to register it. That's
Right.
the arrangement.
And we even talked, now I pay $5 a month for my Nest for the 5-day look back. We were talking about the possibility of not only paying for the camera, or excuse me, $100 towards the camera, but paying maybe the monthly rate that person would need to pay to have a 5-day look back or something like that. We would need to work out the details, though we haven't worked out the details of this yet, but we were thinking at least $100 towards the purchase of the camera.
Mayor, while we did, we said we'd have to work out the details, one of the things we did talk about is not having this retroactive for people who might have purchased it last year, the year before. We would just need to pick a start date to encourage more people. So again, that's, if it ends up in the budget, we would look towards that as one of the items in that policy.
If the city was successful in acquiring the ComEd grant for $10,000, would that then be the covering of the program, or are you looking to add that to the $10,000 that's being requested for a total of 20? I mean, that would just replace the budget item.
Yeah, we had not talked that through, so we would have to bring that back to the council. I think if we're willing to spend, if the council is willing to spend 10,000 and we get a grant for 10, there might be merit to spend the 20. I think it would depend on the development of the program. So I would suggest at this point that would stay in regardless of the grant. And if we get the grant, then we might have additional funds to use.
I've written a lot of grants. A lot of them require some type of match, whether it's in kind or, I have not read this grant, so, and maybe that this funding is partially the match. I don't know.
I'm going to mention this, although Grant, I know that Greg doesn't have the information. Yesterday, I got a phone call from State's Attorney Bob Berlin, and he asked if we would consider installing license plate readers on light poles or telephone poles. He mentioned 75th Street, but Brian and I were talking, and I know the Chief would probably recommend this. I know you're looking into it, but we were thinking the northbound, southbound casts at I-55 and the northbound, southbound Lamont Road at I-55 where cars are coming in and out of Darien. I know, Greg, you and Ed Renka are looking into this. This is something that you have talked about, and this is something we could possibly buy with drug forfeiture funds, correct?
Yeah, back in, early July, I give Ed that project, and he went through Custom Technology, I think it is, whoever we bought the current cameras for, they provide for ALPR, Automated License Plate Recognition. Vigilant, we had for a while. That's another very good company, very popular company. Flock is another one that does a great job. So we'll finish putting that together, and we would use federal forfeiture funds for that.
And would there be grant money or some type of kick-in from DuPage County since they're suggesting it?
No, this is, if he bought it from forfeiture funds, it wouldn't be a need to get a grant from DuPage County. Berlin is hitting up, I think, all the communities. He mentioned 75th Street, Greg, but I don't see the need for them right on 75th Street.
We talked about 75th Street, and we talked about maybe 75th and Clarendon Hills Road or somewhere there. Again, I think we need to really take a look at it. They're very expensive, and you really need to look at what bang for your buck you're going to get out of that process. Most of the time that people that are coming out to steal, either do a burglary to motor vehicle or take the car, are coming out in a stolen car. So even though you have an automatic license plate recognition, it's going to give you the name of the victim, not the name of the suspect. We're hoping to put it on near I-55 because we would like to have that emergency or immediate notification. So when that vehicle goes through the ALPR, it gets a hit on a stolen vehicle. It then notifies the police officers via an MDT, and then we go about finding that vehicle, and hopefully finding it early. That means that if we do locate the car, almost every one of those stolen cars ends in a chase. So then we have to make a decision about chases. And currently we do not allow for chases for property crime. So it's a bigger decision that we have to go through all the different things, but we are looking at that as a project.
Chief, on the cameras, it's not just the cameras, the software too that could be expensive as well, right?
Yeah, there's a number of cameras. So there's a camera that focuses on the license plate, and then that then in turn does a goes through leads and runs the license plate to determine whether it's stolen or used in a crime or whatever else. Then there's other cameras that are overwatch, so they actually take the video of the vehicle itself. And then, like I said, there's software to run that leads. There's software to run that operation. There's connectivity issues, whether it's wireless through some type of cable, fiber, whatever. So that it's gets to be quite expensive, all the different parts. Correct.
Is there currently any municipalities that are using it, or would we be the first one in DuPage?
Oh, no, there's a lot of municipalities that use it. I was at a presentation, it was probably been about a year, maybe not even a year ago. And
Hinsdale's installed it.
Hinsdale has a few, but I can't remember who it was. Bartlett or somewhere has their whole town virtually with license plate recognition. I think they have like 20 some of them.
Has there been a reduction in crime, or has it pretty much been the same? I guess that's also
they've had
what we're looking at. Right?
I think over I forget the number time frame, so maybe over a 4 or 5 year time frame, I think they've had 5 or 6 recoveries or where the ALPR was instrumental in locating people or stolen property.
And just going back to, thanks, Chief, going back to the safety camera grant concept, so would you set a cap then? So say the floodgates open and everyone in Darien who doesn't currently have a desk doorbell or a camera decides to want one. Once the $10,000 is used, then we're done? Or would you, like, if say you said you have 6 months to take advantage of this, what happens when all the money's gone in 3 months?
To me, it's a budgeted item. So either I come back to you saying, hey, this is a great program. It's caught 14 people. It's done whatever, and ask you for more money, or that there's a lot of people that want this program type of thing. So I think to me, you have a budgeted item. You're probably going to do your best to stay within that budgeted item.
Any more discussion amongst the council on the safety camera grant concept? Do I have any objections to that new item? Okay. Any other questions on the overall police department budget? Discussions? Okay. I think we can conclude the police department budget then. Thank you, Chief, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Does anyone need to grab a snack or water before we move on to municipal services streets? Bathroom break?
I think that was like the bullpen. Now Dan's coming in.
Anyone need to hydrate?
play cleanup.
That was a setup, man. Dan's
Bathroom break?
That was like spring.
Dan's, I have a feeling Dan and Chris are going to filibuster us, so we're going to be locked in.
This is the real season now.
Yeah, right here.
Yeah.
Thank
Chief,
for
if
the
you
re-
leave
thank
us and
for
you
the
see our
recognition.
cars still in the parking lot after 9:15, please come in and save us. Okay. We'll take like a
Be here at 9:15.
3-minute break, everybody, 3 to 4 minutes, bathroom, snack.
Go if
I've
I,
never seen.
We had, the- it was,
If I
it
work
was,
it out.
that was the best vacation I've ever been on, to be honest.
or I was thinking.
We'll talk about it later.
New York that week. I was gonna miss all.
Okay. We're going to get back up and started here with municipal services, streets, engineering budget. Page 45. Treasurer Corrin, do you have anything you want to say before we turn it over to?
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
I can't pass up the opportunity. A few comments on this page, on the summary page, page 45 in my book. Brian, I guess I'd just like you to verify the Medicare amounts. I'm coming up, the amounts reflected are a little bit low compared to the salaries at 1.45%, so just at some
In
point.
the estimated actual?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
What else? This is probably more for Dan. As we get out the office supplies and supplies other, as we get out to fiscal year 22 and 23 forecast. I'm happy to see this, but they're actually projected as going down. Office supplies, Dan, that's just,
Just basically, you know, with the computers and some of the technology that we have, is less paper, less office supplies, pens, paper, et cetera.
but not next year, just the following 2 years.
We've been going down steadily, and again.
Okay. All right, I'm happy to see it, so I don't want, don't let me
If
just.
they don't, Mike, if they don't have a facility to run public works, they don't have any need for office.
That's a good point, Mayor. That's a very good point.
Don't let me just score more.
I appreciate the input.
Okay. Under small tools and equipment, it's, we budgeted 11.3. You're showing estimated actual 63,000. Currently through January, we're at 11,400. So we got like another 50,000 coming in, 52,000 coming in there.
I'd have to double check, but I believe it's in relationship to some equipment, and we could double check that.
Quick question on our maintenance of buildings. Our budget was 246 and we're coming in at 190.
I'm sorry, were you at there, Ted?
Under operating costs, maintenance of buildings, budgeted for 246,196. And our estimated actual is 190.
Some of that, the
Maintenance,
He's only requesting 156 for the following year, for 21.
Yeah, that, I think part of it was we had budgeted for the Darien Historical Society, and obviously we pulled that back to go to rebid for FY 2021, so I think that was for 50 or 50,000, I believe it was.
Wasn't it 88, 9?
Now,
That's this
the new one for the FY 21.
Well, then,
I thought it was 25 last year. And
It might have
came
been
in at
25.
50.
You know, I'm not
It
looking
came
at
in
any.
50, which made us pause.
Right, I think you're right, Tom, and again, I'm not looking at any backup here without the numbers.
It was 30,000 last year.
30,000?
Okay.
All right.
but I'm looking at forecasts of year 22 is at 81,000 and year 23 forecast is 191,000. Why such a jump?
I'd have to look at the backup once we get into it, with all due respect.
And one more item from
Yes.
me, as we get into forestry. This year, we budgeted 72, projecting 60. Next year, I know the big jump because of the EAB application, but then the two following years are at 130 and 135, which is a significant jump from the 72 to 60 that we've been in the current year. So it seems to be jumping about $70,000. Well, what are you anticipating, something unusual in those 2 out years?
I'd have to double check. I'm not sure if that's a mistake or if, I know we're not anticipating tree trimming. We're going out to bid for tree trimming right now as we speak, so unless I have projected something, once we get into the backup sheets, then I could tell you more specifically.
Okay, I'll take a look at that. And lastly, on the utilities, gas, electric, you're projecting 5,900. We're already at 6,500 through January.
Yeah, that's just an update. Last time we did the update was earlier, so.
It's pretty small. That's it for me.
Okay. Anything else before we, okay. Administrator Vanna, anything you want to add before we turn it over to Mr. Gombeck and Mr. Thram?
Nothing to add, thanks.
Okay. Dan, anything you want to summarize before we get into the individual accounts?
As a matter of fact, just to go over, obviously, in Public Works, Municipal Services operates on a budget of approximately 2.5 million. Of the crews, we have 19 individuals, including myself, and as well, I'm sorry, 20 with myself. And proud to say that of the Darien individuals, the Public Works guys, we have 6 of them that live in town, so about 30%, 33% ratio. The guys are all proud to be part of the department. They do take pride, and they treat things like they're in their own backyard. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, we'll start up with, on page 46 now, under salaries. I'm not going to mention the 30, which is the, category. I'm just going to go right into the individual account number, 4010. Then overtime, 4030. And then into benefits. Any questions on any of the benefit areas? Okay. Moving down to operating. 4219, liability insurance.
Again, I think we should discuss that new item, the
Right, the-
AEDs.
The AED equip and training. There is supporting documentation for that.
Yes, there is.
So page 51, automated external defibrillator is what an AED is. And there is a request for
There's two-
account,
There's 2 units. One will be in the municipal services, and one will be, oh, sorry. 11 units, excuse me, 11 units, and be between water as well as Public Works. There's also training and education for these. We currently do not have any of these devices throughout the city facilities.
Isn't this like a state recommendation now or something like that?
I'm not aware of any state recommendation. I can't tell you. We're just being a little more conscious of, what happens, and they're getting more common in public places.
Are you looking at me?
No reason, Mike.
He's asking himself the same question.
Mike, every
reason,
time you see a
Michael.
budget, you get a heart attack anyway, so.
Thanks for getting to the point, Ted.
Yeah, I mean, do they have recommendations where these belong? Because I assume there should be one in this room.
Someone will be here, Public Works, Police Department, so throughout the building, strategic locations.
so you're looking for, it says that you're looking for units in all 9 buildings and facilities, and then to have 2 portable units, correct? Or 2 at the Public Works Department?
There would be 2, we put in for 2 additional portable units, so like we could have either our foremen each have one so that they could take out to jobs, or, if we knew we were going to be out and maybe on a bigger project, the guys could have it in the backhoe or a piece of equipment, one of the trucks that they're going to have out there. So it was just the ability to take it mobile without having to deprive a building of it.
So what's the total number of units, Dan, and for all the budgets do we have for these devices?
It's 11 units.
11.
11 and
Yeah.
grand total. Okay.
No.
Chris, what's aerial lift training?
Oh, we got it. too.
It'd be for like lift type machines. So it would include. We have a few years ago we bought the scissor jack that we use for washing vehicles. We have we have a cat lift a machine that the telehauler that has a basket on it. So it's just a way to get some training in there. Some of these trainings that we hadn't put in or that we haven't requesting are things that IRMA, our insurance company, does not offer. So when Cintas, who does our first aid box, they sent a representative out to kind of go over, some different options, as far as the training and defibrillators and things of that nature. Basically, he kind of had a whole list of training, and I kind of referenced it against some things that were available again, from, Irma, because we do try and take advantage of those where we can. But, at a certain point, I think we have to start venturing out and finding ways to make sure these guys are trained in all the different things that we have. So this was only a few training items, and we'll probably have similar requests, going forward for other options and opportunities to get the guys trained.
Thank you.
Do other communities have this, such as Willowbrook, Downers Grove, and Naperville, or are we
The
sort of first-
defibrillators,
The defibrillators,
you know what, I don't know. I would assume, but again, I haven't checked with them. I could reach out to some.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I mean, if you have a package with them, if you buy more at one time, it's
Yeah.
out of curiosity.
We
same
could
thing
always
with
look,
training.
again, we could always look at the state purchase contract or some of the cooperative purchase agreements we have in place, so we could look at that as well.
Yeah, I could just imagine a resident asked that, okay, if we're doing it, are other cities doing it, or are we doing it first, and vice versa, so.
I guess the question is how long they last for. I'm assuming that the batteries would give out before those items would, right?
Yeah.
There
So,
is, yeah.
well, so part of the proposal is this is a monthly rental. You pay a monthly rental fee per unit. You can outright buy the units, but then nobody inspects them. Now we're left to figure out if the machine's still
Gotcha.
good. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an AED, expert. So part of the benefit of having this monthly fee is that you pay it for 3 years on each unit. Every month when the Cintas representative comes out to check your first aid box and fill it, they are also checking the AED machines.
Gotcha.
And they will check each one of them. They will make sure it's good. They'll make sure it's ready to go. If you have an incident where you had to use it, they will actually take it back and get it, double check it out, and they will give you a loaner unit. So you're never down a unit, even if they find something wrong with one of your units. So they're constantly checking the batteries, they're checking all those things to make sure that they're ready to go when you need them, because the worst thing that you would have this machine that you can't use when you actually had to have it. So, and the other thing is the training that would happen would actually be on the unit that we were getting, instead of maybe being trained on some unit that you don't have, now trying to figure out in the pinch, how do you use this thing, because you need to be able to just effectively react, in a situation like that. You don't have time to mess around.
If we save one life, I think it's worth it, but I'll leave it at that.
Agreed.
I know all the public buildings in town, schools, library, churches even have AED devices. Is there any plan to include city hall personnel in the training? I know it says Public Works full-time employees will be receive training on the AED, CPR, blood pathogen training.
We'll be obligated to.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys included in any training for it, but I mean, they break it down on our form, so I think 10 people is like $1,000 or something like that. So I mean, you could easily we could even set it up for the elected officials as well. So they're pretty easygoing with setting training up from the sound of it when I met with them. So we could do as many as wanted.
And there's
This will come back to the city council,
there's no liability, right? If someone uses this machine and someone dies, are we liable? Is that person
a good
that
Samaritan
performs?
law.
Yeah.
Good
Okay.
Samaritan law
All right.
protects you against that.
All right. Second question. You asked for 7,500, but you want a year's worth of support, right? So you should be asking for like 14,000, right?
We are. It's 15, so it's being split between the street and the water department budgets, and then the training that's in there is in a different account. So we're utilizing basically $20,000 for some training and the units, and it's being split 10,000 and 10,000, and then again, even inside the street and water budgets, we have it split out for the liability, and then a portion for the training and education.
Is there any more questions regarding the AED equipment and training? Okay. Any opposition? Okay, we will move forward into maintenance building, 4223. Treasurer Corn.
Okay, Dan, I need an explanation on a couple things here. The HVAC service contract, PD, $5,506. Last year, we had $4,000, this year 5,506. And the immediate next item, HVAC annual service contract, Amber Mechanical, from 20 to 26, 9740,
Right.
which is new. And question is that a 1-year or a 5-year? Are those duplicated or what?
No, the first one, the HVAC service contract, while it was a live proposal, I recently reached out to that company. There's two parts, and if we really need to get into the technical portion, I'll have Chris explain it. But there's basically someone that monitors our HVAC over at the police department. And they sent us a contract. We recently negotiated that it'll be on a per-hour basis, anywhere from $150 to $250 per call-out, in the event they need to troubleshoot something, and then forward that either to Chris or to Amber itself, or Chris will forward it to Amber. So that needs to, we're gonna remove that. Again, that just basically transpired. So that 5506, I would put a low, reduce that to approximately $1,000, since it's a newer system. Again, we weren't sure, we weren't sure they were gonna surprise us with a contract, so we were able to eliminate that. The second portion of this
And
is,
officially change that then?
yeah, I'm sorry, to
Okay, so-
1,000.
So change the 9740 or the,
No, the 5506 to $1,000.
okay,
The next one is with the HVAC that was recently removed and replaced, refurbished over at the police department. This is the first year now. 1 year has passed. This is the maintenance agreement, which was part of the awarded contract, whatever it was, 2 years ago. So this cost is a cost for them to come out and do P&M, whether it's the filters, boilers.
But it says it's a 5-year. Is this an annual
Yes,
payment?
this
or
is
does
an
that cover the
annual.
5 years?
This is an annual. Whereas prior to, we had a different contract for approximately $4,500, and that was 2 years ago. And I don't recall the name of the company, because we've been working on the HVA system for the last year and a half, almost 2 years. We just closed the job out.
So then it's not a May 20 to April 26.
It is. I'm sorry, I follow what you're saying.
Really
Right,
just a
it's a
1
pre-
year. It doesn't
yeah,
cover
right.
5 years. So
I just wanted to reference it for a 5-year,
fee is
yes,
fixed for 5 years, but that's going to be an annual expenditure.
that is correct.
That makes that bottom number 79,142, right?
At the same time, I mean, everyone's been very happy with the system now, so compared to the call-outs and a lot of the invoices that we had before. Chris, I'm not sure if you want to chime into anything on that respect.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of service calls has drastically gone down.
$500,000 on a new system. though.
That is very
Well,
true.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's very true. You know, we worked out some bugs and had some initial, problems, but seems to be working pretty well. Haven't had any complaints, recently, so that's good news. Knock on wood.
Thank you.
anything else, Treasurer Corn, under maintenance building? Questions? We go into
Yeah,
the
well,
next
I guess
page?
I guess it continues on to the next.
Why don't
page.
we just look at the first page on 46, and then we'll move over? Anyone else have any other questions on page 46, account 4223? Okay, then we'll flip the page with account 4223, maintenance building continuing.
Pest control went up from 2,000 to 3,000.
Yes, currently working on that. We're going to be bringing back a contract, some type of RFP for the services that are provided. Obviously, we started this approximately 3-4 years ago, just to the, concerns of critters that were running around City Hall and the police departments and Public Works. We just take care of them ourselves, so we're okay over there.
Yeah.
You guys are rough.
Never mind.
They really don't want to come in.
the people. Those people work here, man. You gotta be
I'm
careful.
not gonna make it.
They don't want to come into our building, and no critters want to come into our building, so we put signs up, and it's worked out very
Things that
well.
They're not welcome. They don't feel welcome there.
No, but, yeah, we're gonna have since, we took the estimate of what we've been paying. It's been a little more than no, I shouldn't say customary, of what we paid in the past. There's been some increases. So again, we're going to have an RFP coming up for that.
We're going to go ahead and pause a moment and look at antenna painting, Public Works. There's,
One other quick thing, on the generator, how often do we test these generators?
Annually.
Do you?
Yeah.
There's two of them then, one for?
We have 3 total. There's one at the water pumping station on Plainfield Road as well. But there's one at the police department, one at the city hall. They do test weekly. They're set to on a schedule to start and stuff. So we do at times get alarm problems with those as well. So
How old are those, do you know?
I would guess since the buildings were built, I'm not 100% sure, but they're probably 20,
holding up
probably
okay?
20 plus years. We've had some maintenance issues with both of them, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, they seem to be okay.
so do you have a yearly inspection of them too
Yeah,
then? Okay.
they get load bank tested and preventative maintenance performed.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay, no. Keeping it in chronological order, we're going to look at antenna painting, Public Works. If you turn to page 58 of your supporting documents. Just want to point that out. There's several pages that's are there to talk about repainting of the south tower.
Dan, do we go out to bid for that, or how does that work?
How many times? No, and again,
It's in here.
we went out to bid for this, I believe it was 3 times at this point, and, whether the bids, no responses, or a bid came after the bid date, so we just had conglomeration of different bid circumstances, and again, of the last bid, and it was a higher bid, so there's no,
Rhyme or reason?
no.
I guess the question is, are the painters are the ones that did the water tank near Mark DeLay about 5 years ago?
No,
Okay, let's just leave it at that. You know where I'm going with this one.
yes.
The bottom line, they did a terrific job and it was finished perfectly for the public.
Right, right.
All right.
I mean, is this tower required to be painted because of the height at all, or? I'm just trying to understand too, what's the value even spending the money on painting it?
The value is the corrosive factor of it. It has not been painted since it's been installed, and I believe it was installed in the early 80s by Chicago. 1990s by the University of Chicago. Since then, we basically do an annual maintenance inspection. A company comes out, does an annual maintenance inspection, looks at all the trusses, welds, anything that may need to be welded, and looks for additional structural issues.
But at the same time, they're going to turn around and if it's rusting and they got to weld it, they'll take care of it. That involves including the painting, I'm assuming, correct?
The painting is always separate because you can't
really?
just
Okay.
paint, touch up unless they nick something. But other than that, this antenna tower has never been painted.
Gotcha.
Will it corrode? Yes. Is it they brought it to our attention. Is it a critical point? I won't say it's at a critical point, but we don't want it to get to that point either. And again, if something was to happen, it's 200, is it 200 feet, that one? I know we have 2 of them, but regardless, it's high in the air, is subject to wind loads constantly. So again, it's good preventive maintenance.
So, I'm sorry, who does the inspection then? The painters or someone
No,
independent?
there's an individual company, and I'd have to double check who it is. Tower Works.
And how often do they do this inspection?
Once a year.
Okay. And what's the last report on this tower?
The report was they recommended painting it.
But they don't do the painting.
They do painting, correct. They were one
So
of the
they're
original.
recommending it just so they can paint it?
No, they recommended it. They did bid on it. They did not bid it on it this last time.
Okay.
The last time they bid on it was Allstate Tower. We did contact Tower Works, and they were too busy. Their schedule was already booked for this year.
Okay.
You know, Hinsdale South did a great job upstairs, right? Can we get them to do this job? Can we get them to bid on that?
I have no concerns with that. It might be a liability issue, but sure. What colors would you like?
Yeah, where do you want the tombstones, please?
So, as a background of this, this did go around municipal services for a number of meetings, and I don't even know if we ever had a agreement on this particular thing. And I guess my concerns regarding this are, we have a 30-year-old tower that has a life expectancy from 30 to 50 years from what I've been able to read about, and God knows whether the internet's telling me the truth. And I think we talked about, I don't know what the value of putting $80,000 worth of paint on a tower that we can replace for under $200,000 is. Are we doubling our life expectancy, or are we better off in 10 years putting up a new tower and getting a brand new tower? That's the only issue I have with this is is it good money after bad?
Because one of the bids early on was about the price of the tower.
Right.
Well, it was more actually.
Right.
The other bid we had this year was $300 and some thousand, and I don't know what they were doing.
Right.
Maybe they were hand painting it with I don't know, almost $400,000.
To paint the tower?
Ultimately, yeah.
Yeah.
So ultimately, my question is, does it make more sense to start planning on replacing the tower rather than painting it? Are we getting more bang for the buck by putting up a brand new tower and getting 30 to 50 more years out of it? Or is this extending the tower life by 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? I mean, I don't know if we know the answer to that question.
But yeah, I'm not seeing any concerns that the tower is structurally failing. I think if there was a lot of spa welding going on consistently, and anchors or whatever trusses, the steel trusses that hold it together being replaced, we're not seeing that. Carriers also that are installing things on this tower more than likely would have come back and said, hey, we can't install XYZ part because of the corrosion. So again, it's like a water tower tank. Water tower tanks every 20, 25 years are recommended for painting. So this follows the same guidelines, if you want to say.
Go ahead.
Just for clarification, these are the two big towers of Cass Avenue near Waterfall Glen that we have the big cell phone that we
Right, but it's only for
resell.
one tower, though. This is the south tower. The other one is galvanized, and that one isn't painted.
But isn't that like only 7 years old, or am I missing that?
Correct. About that, maybe 5, 7 years old, right? That one is not an issue. We're not referring to that one.
Which is fine, but what did we pay for that thing? Do you remember?
The company built it, turned it over to us for a reciprocation on the,
Lease agreements.
correct.
Okay, I got you.
And I'm not sure how many years those were. Would have to look that up, but.
A good deal, but I'm going to complicate the issue a little bit more, but just really by raising some questions here. Because we do have two towers. Number one, would it be possible, even if this tower were to say, hey, forget it, it's too old, it's no good anymore, would we be able to transfer
No.
what's on there to the other tower? No.
No,
Okay.
structural loads are currently prohibiting that.
Secondly, I know we're supposed to be having a discussion on public works. Do we have a new building? Do we relocate or whatever? One thing a lot of the council knows, we do get some pretty good rental off of these towers, so we are getting some good revenue there.
Caveat will be to keep
If
the
we sell
towers.
the property, would we be able to maintain the towers and our rental income on that?
Yes, there's an easement already in place, and again, just be an access, a roadway access, agreement that we'd have to include when we sell public works.
If we
Mike, or you could
Oh,
probably.
if, I'm sorry.
You could probably sell those contracts too, if you were to sell. We haven't looked at that, but sometimes companies are doing that
Those are
also.
pretty lucrative, though,
Um,
I think, it seems like.
Yeah.
anyway.
Do we have any idea how many or how long the leases are lasting on the tower that we'd have to paint? Any idea?
To pay or,
To paint.
oh, to paint?
We have a log of the leases, but I don't have that in front of me.
They're various. We just renewed several of them, if I'm not mistaken, over the course of the year. And what's your point, Ted?
The point I'm trying to make is that is it a situation where somebody might come back and say, hey, our technology has increased, I'm just throwing this out there. Now we're going to 5G, we're going to heavier equipment that we got to put on the towers. We need to replace the towers, and if somebody's willing to pick it up. I never thought about the fact, thinking, if it looks at it and it looks terrible, that's one thing. But Tom brought up a very good point. If it's a situation where we're only going to get 30 to 40 years out of it, or 30 to 50, and it's one of those situations where somebody's going to come back and cut a deal to replace it with galvanized, then it may be worth it to hold off. That's, me, and I've said this for 11 years. Are we chasing good money after bad? And Tom brought it up. It's something that I never would have thought about. That's the only thing.
I mean, from what I've researched, I haven't seen at what point these towers fail unless they're overloaded, because there are opportunities. Let's say another carrier comes in tomorrow. Every carrier that comes in needs to do a structural integrity on the proposed equipment that they're looking at. That includes the cables, the dishes, and they have to basically provide the calculations. A structural engineer signs off on it, and then we have it reviewed by a third party. If there is let's say it's weak on a couple trusses, as I'll refer to it, there's opportunities where they can modify and add additional steel trusses to basically say it's a straight, now it's structurally safe. So that's been done throughout the industry, and I know that we've had modifications as well.
I guess my question is, with the development of 5G and then 6G technology with small cell technology, in 10 years, you may not need towers like that at all anymore, because everything's going up on poles within neighborhoods.
I've been told that the equipment on towers will still be in demand. I would have to verify that again. I believe that was at one of the managers' meetings I was at, that was raised. But I think, though, that need will still be there, even when 5G is installed everywhere.
Is this tower the taller one or the shorter one?
Shorter.
Shorter?
The new one was the taller one that went up.
Is there an advantage to holding off and building a new tower that could handle more loads and even allow us to have more leases if it was galvanized and bigger?
There's still some room. We're not seeing a large demand where we need to do this. My off-the-cuff answer right now is no. If there was an influx of 5 carriers that were waiting to come in.
Right, there's no waiting list, and you've got room still on this tower.
There's enough room, and again, there's still opportunities for a structural review and engineering to be able to fortify it, to be able to support additional loads.
Okay, but how much longer is this 80,000 going to get us on this tower? 10 years?
Almost at least 10, if not 15 years, really.
And without painting it?
We just risk more corrosion. Corrosion obviously leads to structural integrity concerns. At what point is it classified as a failure? I don't know. Maybe 5 years, maybe 2 years.
But in the end, if we have to weld, new trusses in, that's separate from the painting on this, correct?
Correct. And when you say if, that's if another carrier comes in and he needs to fortify it because it doesn't meet the structural loads. And then they will be required, obviously, to do the spot painting on there, which there's a methodology behind that as well.
So did a carrier tell us that we had to paint it, or we're bringing it up that
No.
we recommend?
The maintenance company that we utilize brought it to our attention.
We had it inspected as part of a annual, Dan, you said,
Yes,
right? Annual,
yes.
yeah. I would suggest that, there's a number of questions that I'm hearing tonight. I would suggest the council leave it in because it's over 5. It'll come back to the council in the budget. And that'll give us some time to answer some of these questions. We're not experts in these towers, and you need, again, private companies to do that. But I would suggest we leave it in and come back. And if we come back and we get a bid at 180 versus, again, the bids have been all over the place. It's hard. Well, you have that bid now, but it's still hard to gauge. You're right, Dan. We have the bid now. They've been up and down, but there still sounds like there's some questions. We'll never answer those tonight.
I
So
guess the question is, if we were to buy a new tower, I'm just throwing this out there, and it's galvanized steel versus what we have right now, is the galvanized steel pre-painted, or is it just plain when they put it on up? Because I can't picture what it looks like right now, color-wise. I'm just asking that question.
Current one we have, the most recent one that was built was galvanized.
Okay.
It's my understanding that you don't need to paint that. The other one that we have is a steel, I'll refer to it as a steel type of structure, that does require painting. Painting back then was orange and white, which was part of, they had to paint it orange and white due to aviation, FAA, so some of those rules have decreased now. So that's really the nature of it.
See, I'm thinking all of a sudden when Mayor Marquez, myself, and John Curran were talking about the salt shed, and we were going to spend $150,000 on something that might last 10 or 15 or 20 years, and we came back and said, why don't we just go all in and go, 270, 280, it's going to last forever, or 50 years, double the life. The question is, is it worth it to think about long term, not paint it now, and then 5 or 6 years down the line about possibly getting a galvanized steel tower with new technology and not having to worry about painting it. That's all of a sudden I'm thinking about it, because I didn't realize it was a situation. There's a different, regular steel versus galvanized steel. So I don't know.
Could we get a second opinion from the cell phone company that leases it from us? I just assume they have experts that work for them. They can take a quick glance at it as well and get their opinion.
Sure, we could
That's
always,
not,
and again, we just did some random check with our third-party consultant, and it's really good housekeeping is what it boils down to. Unfortunately, the bids are higher than what they started at, but yeah, it's,
Why don't we leave this, and why don't we come back to it when we've gone through the rest of the budget? Why don't we do that?
okay.
We're spending a lot of time on this. Let's move
Right.
on.
Okay, is everyone okay with that? Okay. We'll continue on, and anything else?
Mayor, if I may add the next.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4. The next 4 items Dan had requested, and it's basically upgrades to the area downstairs, primarily out of this room. And I did not include that. We also have the Darien Historical Society foundation repairs at $88,000 and some change that I had taken out of the request. And I just one clarification, because there were some questions early on. The maintenance forecast goes down to $88,000 the second year of the 3-year. In the third year, it went up again to $191, because in the third year, as it shows here, there's a $100,000 project, or $110 for the elevator in the police department. That's why it spikes up again in the third year. But again, just so everybody's clear, there's no numbers next to the next few items.
And we don't have any supporting documentation for any of that either, right?
No, those were more minor in nature, so I did not include backup.
Okay.
And I did not, I'm looking here, the Historical Society, I don't have any backup for, but the council's been talking about that, and really this brings up a bigger issue of should we continue to be involved in any maintenance in the Historical Society? Now that, as we go through the remaining streets budget and the capital projects budget, there's just a number of items that are new requests this year to improve maintenance of our rights of ways and some other drainage projects. So that's really a bigger question for the council, not should we just budget or not for the foundation repair, but should we continue to budget and be responsible for the maintenance of that building? Currently, it's a 3-way agreement between us, the society, and the school, and we several years back had the council had approved the agreement, which basically provides that we take care of the larger maintenance items over $5,000, if I'm not mistaken. So I guess maybe if you take these.
So, well, first off, let's just make sure there's no more discussion on the City Hall items any questions about that Brian did not include, that Dan had requested for any of those items. Anything? Okay. So then going back to the Darien Historical Society. So this 3-way agreement, Is it just a gentleman's agreement? Is it just
It was a written agreement approved by all parties.
Okay.
But
And
it's
what's
an
the
easy out.
expectation?
It's an easy out. It's not, it didn't lock us in. If somebody wants to cancel the agreement, it's just a notice, I think a 30-day notice.
So it's between District 61, Darien Historical Society, and the city of Darien?
Yeah, and basically District 61 is, they're part of the agreement because they own that property, but they take no responsibility, financial responsibility for continued maintenance of that building while the Historical Society occupies that building.
And I had asked Dan for a little background on how much we have done to date.
We've spent probably over $100,000, Mary.
Okay, well, what I got says 40,000.
Yeah, I think,
We have items that I asked Julie for the listing, and Julie gave me the listing, and it did not include the sidewalk, it did not include, so we didn't have, those things were paid for, and we didn't actually have them where they showed up as a total cost. We've probably spent closer to $100,000 on that.
well, the numbers we pulled together were more actual numbers. I'm not sure what numbers Julie gave, but I know when I went through the budget in previous years, a couple of those items we ended up not doing. So the number we have was, again, from actual expenditures. I think we had probably 30,000 in the budget a couple years ago to do woodwork on the inside. So it appears that we were going to spend that, but we ended up never doing that. So we might have identified 100,000 in projects at the time, but I don't think all of those were completed.
What we did do is we did the painting on the outside of the building. We did the painting on the inside of the building.
Correct.
We did new carpeting in the basement. We did new ceiling tile in the basement. And we did a sidewalk that went around the entire building. And there was some talk about the woodwork, and we never did the woodwork.
No, and that's where I think maybe the confusion is, because what Mary has is inaccurate, is a more reflective figure.
Julie had a listing of, this is what we spent, and these were the items, when the sidewalk was not one of those. So I don't know what we paid.
Well,
for the
I've got
sidewalk.
concrete landscaping for November of 2017, September to November of $7,000. So, okay, so we're thinking it's $40,000.
We should go with the number you have.
Okay, so about $40,000 to date per the agreement is what we've put in.
And Chairman, just so you know, we cover expenses, anything that are over, above, and beyond $5,000. So we're not covering, miscellaneous repairs, if you want to say.
Actually, Mary, just one other item. We discussed at that point making the Historical Society part of the city, and they would have lost their 501c3 status, and Michael's suggestion was that we not do that, that we allow them, that we would just take care of the maintenance over 5,000. Actually, I think Mike came up with the whole program.
I didn't come up with a program in terms of reimbursement. I know we discussed it, and that was one of the disadvantages.
Well, but you were the one who said if they don't want to do a 501c3, this is the way we should do it in terms of paying for the maintenance of the building. We had a lot of discussion, I know.
We did, yeah.
There was a concern that, the revenue the Historical Society would take in from fundraisers was not enough to cover their ongoing expenses, whether it's the building improvements or whether they're, their artifacts they need to take care of. So that was the discussion, should the city get involved to help that organization survive or not? And I think, again, when we're seeing projects coming in estimated 88,000, I'm just saying the council should really revisit, the intent.
Tom?
Just tossing it out there, has we ever looked at the library taking over some of the artifacts? I don't know if they would have room or.
Well, the Historical Society is really a separate
not the
entity.
building.
So I don't know, they have their own board, but I don't know what they've looked at, other than when we suggested years ago that, hey, should the city take it over? Mayor, you know better than me, but I don't think they like that idea. And I don't think they would like it any more that the library took it, would be my guess.
Is it?
Tom Belzic, I know you guys have talked about this in
Yeah.
municipal services.
And just as another side note, originally we had budgeted $30,000 for it in last year's budget, and then when the bid finally came in on it, it was in the $50,000 range, and we kind of balked on that because there was another individual from U.S. Waterproofing who came in and said, "Oh, I missed the bid. I want to rebid on this," and we're like, makes sense to us. If we can get under what we're already spending, that'd be great. And we reopened the bidding, and he didn't bid again. And not only did it not come back at 56,000, it came back at 88,000. So we were going in the wrong direction. So we were not interested in approving that at the time, and thought it'd be best if the whole council kind of found out about what was going on with this.
And to be quite honest with you, they took all the paneling off of the walls of the basement themselves. Glenn Haynes went in there, he caulked a lot of the cracks in the walls. They have not had, the only water they've had in the basement was when one of their people was watering in that corner, and it went down into the ground and it came out in the corner. It was like a foot by a foot. That's all it was. So they really haven't had any additional water damage since Glenn made the repair to the wall. So I'll be honest with you. I don't know if it's worth $88,000 to fix it. I think that if there's a possibility that we would buy the property and move the school, why fix the basement?
I would suggest just to remove this item and to not award the bid and handle it on when cases such as this come up, that someone removed the actual wall to see what's behind her. It's a very complicated project. There's different elements of the foundation that make this more of a challenge, from block cinder wall to concrete foundation, to coatings that have been applied previously. So if a leak is identified, again, maybe there's somebody within the Historical Society that can remove the paneling, get in there, take a look at it, and maybe it's U.S. waterproofing, or a company like this that's going to come in there and handle it on an individual basis versus excavating the entire site.
I mean, I'll be honest with you that right now it's the basement. They're already talking about the front stairs need to be repaired. That would be another bill. It's like when we feel we have this thing maintained to the point where we don't have to put more money, the next thing could be windows. They may want thermopane windows. Those are the old original windows. So this is just going to eat up more and more cost.
So there was a budget of $30,000 this year that was not used?
Wasn't used due to the bid
Right.
conditions,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
They do not know that we're not going to do this.
I mean, should we give them,
Oh.
I mean,
They
if
could
we're
be
all in
listening.
agreement, should we give them notice that we're getting out of this agreement?
Well, do we even want to
That's
go
not
there
up
at this
today.
point?
We want to make sure, we wanted to go through the budget process before
Okay.
we even met with them to tell them that.
Okay.
I think based on what's been said right now is that is there a real problem with the basement? From what I'm understanding,
No.
and the history over the last year and a half we've been bidding, there hasn't been any additional concerns. So if there hasn't been any additional concerns, I suggest that we remove this. And if the city council decides to continue the policy of anything over $5,000, that we evaluate each project as it comes in. In this particular case, if a worst case is, let's budget no more than $10,000 if there are such leaks that occurred.
I think they're two separate issues. I agree with Dan. One issue is that we're not prepared to go forward with, allocating dollars in the budget to address the basement because we're not confident that there's a real $90,000 problem right now. But I think it's a separate conversation about the agreement
Right.
that I don't think that needs to be decided at this point. I think just not moving forward with the budget and dealing with, them having to come back to municipal services like they've been doing to discuss any future repairs, whether it's the basement, the stairs, or windows.
I may have to sleep on the couch for about a month, but I think that it's worth saying that the Historical Society really needs to take a serious look at fundraising for their own good. We've been very supportive. We've helped them with major projects. The staircase that goes up into the building, we were part of that project as well. And you don't see that in any cost, but I think that was a cost sharing. But I think that they really need to take a look at raising money you know, there are people who say we need this society in Darien. I asked my wife the other day, how many people do you see when you have an open house? And she said, we might have 3 people that come in on any Sunday that we have an open house. So the public who's clamoring not to move that building is also the public that's not going there when it's open to even look at it. So they really need to take a real look at whether or not they're a viable entity anymore in the city of Darien.
Or perhaps entertain partnerships like that have been brought up tonight with other organizations in the community,
Right,
or
possibly.
sponsorships or other things. And I just don't think that I think they've been so focused on the restoration and the gathering of artifacts that maybe they just haven't, thought about that. But I think my opinion is we should, not jump the gun and say we're throwing an agreement out the window until, maybe the time comes that the society feels like they, have tried everything they can and can't find money on their own.
Which I think that was the point several years ago when the agreement came forward. Again, maybe it's a suggestion in maybe the April or May admin committee meeting, we could bring this forward to take a look at, because again, some of the newer elected officials probably haven't really gone through that process. You should see the agreement and decide, or maybe make a recommendation of how to proceed with that.
Okay.
Chairman, is it fair to ask for a consensus on to put at least $10,000 in there, or 0?
Okay, so we know that there's a consensus not to put 88,920. Is there a consensus to put in $10,000?
I think we still have an agreement with them. I think we have some liability to it, so I think at least have the 10,000 there.
And that, again, will come back to city council, unless there was some type of...
Because if it's over $5,000, it's got to come back for a vote anyway.
Correct.
So
Can I have a show of hand?
But we don't know if there's a need at this time.
No, what I would do is that we would identify, and based on the identification, the paneling would be removed prior to, and it would be isolated to a fix at that location, so there's not, guessing, if you want to say, of what needs to be done. It's pinpointed. So if it's pinpointed, it's 1 crack or it's 2 cracks. And for $5,000 to $10,000, I'm sure that could be accomplished with that funding.
I got no problems with 10 grand if that's the case versus 88. So
Tom?
Do they have a sump pump and a French drain around there? I mean, if you get a little bit of water and they can just pump it out.
It's more than a sump. I'm sorry, Tom.
So do you have a sump pump and like a drainage system around the building? Then
Correct, and that's not compromised, because if that would have been compromised, we would have seen water percolating through the floor itself, and there's been no evidence of that.
So it's a one-time potential event that happened that you're looking to address.
Well,
sounds like.
and according to, there's several stories that I've heard.
They had some landscaping and some other things.
They haven't had a water incident since they had the major incident 2-3 years ago.
Yeah,
Which
But they
was
might
due to
have
human
other
error.
items that come up besides this particular one, because we have, since the agreement started, had a budget for them in our budget, correct? Like last year it was 30,000, nothing was spent. Did we spend money on anything else for them?
That 30,000 was in regards to the foundation repairs, and obviously that escalated.
So that was
we never-
forfeited. But
Right.
did we spend money on anything else for them?
Last year, no.
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Mary, I guess one
Yes.
thing I would maybe disagree with you a little bit on, you said we shouldn't even tell the society at this point that we might be thinking of changing the agreement. I would think, in fairness to them, if they're going to need to raise funds and be more aggressive in terms of that, I would think that it would at least give them the courtesy to say, hey, council's thinking of relooking at that.
Oh, no,
and
I
saying
mean,
we're not
the
gonna cover it.
conversation has evolved since I made that statement. So I think there definitely needs to be a sit-down. I think discussions need to take place with them prior to saying the agreement's going to end, because, we don't even know if the agreement is going to end, but there needs to be a lot more creative thinking taking place, or brainstorming by them or even other groups, because obviously the current model is not working.
Mary, I understood you to say we're not here tonight to...
Yeah, no, I meant tonight we're not making that decision.
Yes, that's
didn't
what
mean,
I
like,
understood, yeah.
They could be watching us on TV and hearing the whole thing. So I'm not trying to keep anything from them. I'm just saying I wanted to keep the issues separate tonight. I didn't want us making any decisions about the 3-year agreement tonight. I just wanted us to decide on the budget. Or the 3-way agreement, not the 3-year. Okay, so going back to, Dan Godbeck has suggested putting in $10,000 in the budget to cover any possible maintenance issues and including the basement and the leak. And I'm looking for a consensus to add $10,000 in and take out the $88,920.
And I'm sorry, but I would have a counter to that, and think the agreement should be revised. You know, what we've tried to do is we have tried to put money in there for specific identified projects.
Okay.
And again, I am hearing now that maybe isn't the problem anymore. I would recommend that we don't put any money in at this point, because we have not really identified.
Because the agreement
a
says
concrete-
you budget for identified projects? Is that what the agreement
That's
says?
what we have done. I mean, we're not budgeting for the unknowns. We've been budgeting for planned improvements.
Like you haven't just done a contingency budget, is what you're saying?
Not
Okay.
that I recall over the
No,
last
that's,
4
you're
years.
clarifying
but-
it, because having not seen the agreement and
Yeah.
knowing how things transpired in the past.
They actually came to us, Mary, and they mentioned the painting, the carpeting, the ceiling, and we budgeted specifically. And they haven't come to us for anything this year except the basement.
Right, and just to clarify, the monies that would be utilized would be only for any type of foundation repairs if the council was to grant the 10,000.
Okay. So I'm looking, based on all this that's been discussed, for a consensus to allocate $10,000 for any possible basement maintenance at the Darien Historical Society Museum. A raise of hands. So we've got 4?
4.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're sending the wrong message to them.
I don't think we're sending a message, Eric.
Yeah, you are. You're sending the message that you're going to cover stuff, and now we're going to turn around and take the agreement away. I mean, you're sending a totally missed message to them.
Well, until-
What do
until-
you-
Well, we have to sit down and
Until that
review
hap-
the
until that happens,
agreement.
we have to
We
be-
still have an agreement.
Okay, whatever.
And just to be clear, none of the money will go to them unless they come forward with a project that exceeds $5,000 that we can identify.
That's correct.
So it has to come back to
So
city
it's really
council.
just for budget purposes,
Right.
and we're not approving any money
Right.
today.
Right.
We're just budgeting it.
We just want to have the opportunity that we didn't miss anything, and there is a real problem, so there's, if you want to call this a contingency in respect to the foundation, potential foundation repairs, and like I said, there's a lot of rhetoric going around
Because
about,
as right now, as we stand right here at 8:20 on a Tuesday night, we have an agreement with them to take care of major stuff. If something pops up here in the next couple of weeks and we don't have this money, we're gonna be coming back here going over budget. So it's just, not saying that we're spending it, it's just better to be prepared for it, that's all I'm thinking.
Actually, we still have $30,000 in this year's budget that we haven't used.
Yes.
That's true.
And then I think then, as
true,
I would
right,
recommend putting it on the to-do lists for whether it's the mayor, the administrator, that the agreement needs to be reviewed moving forward. Okay?
Yeah, I think we'll bring it to the committee over the next 60
Okay,
days.
that sounds good.
Just one last question, since you mentioned the agreement is a third. Are they putting the other two society, for example, putting a third of the money in as well?
No.
And or is it actually we're financing it 100% and they're just managing it?
It's a handshake agreement.
So
No, it's a,
Get stuck with the bill.
the
yeah, that's what
agreement-
I'm just clarifying. So we have the bill and they're doing everything
Well, it's an
else.
agreement the city council approved, and the Historical Society signed and approved in the school district. But there, again, I believe it's a 30-day out clause. We didn't want to tie the city's hands forever.
Yeah.
So-
But are the school putting any money into
No.
it or anybody else? It's
No.
just
City belongs to
us.
the
Aren't they
That's
supposed
their-
to, according to the agreement?
No, the schools.
So
the
in the
school-
agreement, it says we get, city
Yeah,
gets
we
stuck
do. The
with
school's
100%.
position at the time was, they don't need the building for anything. They're not going to invest any money into it. It's not them using the building. I understood that. And Historical Society was having a problem coming up with money to do the building repairs. And at the time, the council felt it was a priority to keep that going. So that's,
And can you possibly get us all a copy of that agreement? Is that
Sure.
something we could have?
yeah.
Okay, great.
Mary?
Yes.
Brian, if I can back up here a little bit too, just as we're talking about this, I'm noticing on the department maintenance, we're showing 80,192 and the discretionary 80,800 for the antenna painting, and yet on the summary sheet on the front, we're showing the 80,192, but we're only showing 76,000 on the antenna painting. So I think,
probably due to a contingency on the incentive.
Oh, on the backup paperwork?
No, on the front page, the part that does lead in, tie into the budget, on the discretionary, it's showing 76,000 instead of the 80,800 on the antenna painting. So the total is showing up as 156,192, and I think it should be 160,992.
It didn't take into account the contingency, I think.
Yeah,
It's off by the contingency.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
80,000.
the $5,000.
Oh,
Yeah. For the- Okay,
That's got it.
okay. So I've modified it on my sheet. Do you know what, did you see that, Brian, what Mike's talking about?
Some of the
Yeah,
catch.
I'm looking for it.
Brian.
Okay.
Page 46.
So then, are there any more questions under building maintenance?
I'm sorry, Chairman, if we could just,
Absolutely.
I want to make sure on the bathroom fixtures, I know you mentioned it, I just want to maybe, give attention to it for a second. There's no interest on the bathroom fixture upgrade, the paint upgrades, or the tile upgrades, or for the refrigerator down here, correct?
Right, there's nothing listed in the budget.
Well, yeah.
Right,
Brian
and-
pulled it out, right?
Right.
exactly, Okay.
And we don't have any backup for it to bring it up.
We have the backup.
For what, Mayor? I'm sorry.
The city hall upgrades, we'll put them out, bathroom, paint,
Paint,
tile.
fixtures.
Oh,
Or
yeah,
not.
no, I didn't have any of the background. Dan had asked about that, and I just, again, this is a basement area on that side. I didn't think it was worth investing any money in.
Does anyone on the council want to anyone have any opposition for us not funding that? Do you have a consensus to move on from that? Okay, at this point, I think we do.
Okay.
So we're going to jump into maintenance equipment, 4225. Everything on the top, not looking at Manning Road retaining wall or Lake in the Woods discussion at the bottom with the asterisks. Everything else, is there any questions?
Nope.
Okay, so then we're going to jump into Manning Road retaining wall for $60,000. And there is supporting documentation, page 63.
Yeah, in a nutshell, that retaining wall is along Manning Road. It's approximately a 4-foot-high wall, which is considered a structural wall. That structural wall, just the material that it's made out of would not be made out of that material today. Obviously, the salt has just annihilated it, and it's starting to disintegrate. Several years ago, we did do some maintenance on it. Probably for about $2,500, $3,000, replaced some of the top brick, maybe even a couple layers of the brick in between, not in between the first top courses. It's getting to a point where it's really starting to crumble, so that wall has to be removed and replaced. There's no other opportunities for the grade, since the grade is so steep from the sidewalk to the roadway there. There's no other alternative but to construct a retaining wall.
It's cinder blocks right now, or not really cinder blocks. What is that, like
It's a
decorative?
block, it's considered a block wall. The
Okay.
technology for
Okay.
block walls today that are salt tolerant,
Okay.
either A, were non-existent back then,
Okay.
or were very limited in the type of construction they were constructed of.
So the new 60,000, would it go into like more of like a concrete wall? Kind of like where at the corner of 75th and Plainfield's at, how they redid that?
I'm not sure if it's going to be of that type of material. I think it's going to be, you want to make it somewhat aesthetically pleasing, since it is in a residential neighborhood. So we're looking at using block wall similar to the style that's there, with the exception that it is salt tolerant. And again, this will be an item that will come back to municipal services as well as city council. And 60,000 is a budgetary item that we received from one of the vendors.
Is there any more questions on this item?
Life expectancy?
Of the next one, 50, 75 years,
So if we spend the 60K, it's going to last that long for sure then?
yes.
Do we have any other bids other than the one we got?
At this point, we felt that it was a good bid. We didn't go out and seek for RFPs. You know, we called a couple different sources on brick, labor, and then we combined the two, and then we sent it back out to one vendor, and he was in line with what material and/or labor costs would be. So we feel that, you know, there's a good number for city council to look at this point.
Is there a benefit of just knowing what that what that number is that we can budget, but yet still go out to get bids?
I'm sorry, is there what?
Is there still a value? So we have a
gonna
base.
get a
We have
bid.
an.
Still
Oh, yeah, we're gonna basically
Just for
put a-
budget reasons.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna put an RFP together, put it out to the, street. And see
Okay, so when
what
you
the-
said it, it didn't sound like we needed to put it for bid. That's why I was asking the question.
Oh, no, it was a preliminary bid is what I said. I'm sorry, yeah.
All right.
Any other questions on the Manning Road retaining wall? Is there any opposition to that? Okay. Lake in the Woods copper sulfate treatment, I know that there's no budget shown. I know we had gotten some emails about that. Is there any more discussion or information you want to share with us about that? Dan?
At this point, the 20,000 was originally earmarked, and what had happened was a resident who was on the homeowners association had called and requested some funding for this. Obviously, they were in a position where at the time they did not know what the funding is, and what the funding was going to be for was there's two lakes that are within the Lake in the Woods subdivision. One of those lakes is the city of Darien's. So long story short is they wanted to be able to start treating the lakes for algae and putting fountains in them. A deadline of January, whatever it was, 15th was supposed to have been accompanied by a bid. That came and went. I got a call 2 weeks ago or I should say in February, with this resident, and prior to, I received a call from the homeowners association management, Mandy, and I asked her if they were still requesting funding. Her answer was no. So I think there was some type of disparity between the management and the homeowners association. I'm not sure who was doing what. The bottom line is that it would have cost us approximately $2,000 to treat what they were going to treat it with. I told them it's not going to be in this year's budget, number one. The $20,000 that was earmarked for this is no longer valid. There's no agreement in place. The only agreement in place is we told them that they have the opportunity to treat the lake through a building permit along with a certificate of insurance. So there's no further issue at this time for budget consideration on this item.
Thank you very much, Dan Gombeck. And the information about this was starting on page 64, in case anyone wanted to look back at that to put themselves to sleep tonight. Okay, moving on to maintenance vehicles. 4229. 4233 postage mailings. 42, you look like you got a question, Joe Kenny.
Well, I'm kind of lost. I keep hearing you say 42, and I don't see a 42.
40, item 30-4233,
Far left.
Postage mailings.
postage mailings.
30-4243.
4233, 30-4233 under account number. On page 47.
Sorry.
Right below,
Sorry. Sorry.
it's okay. Then I'm moving on to rent equipment, 4243.
So our tub grinder is 6,200. We have this conversation every year.
3,700.
How much?
3,700. No, the sales. You were going to ask the sales, so I was preempting
Thank you.
your
All right, that's
questions.
what okay, gotcha.
What was the question for the rest of us? You two psychics or?
Yeah, you guys have a little
Tub
like
grinder
banter
is-
here that we're all like not privy to.
For people, we'll slow down. The tub grinder is 6,200 for us to rent every year, so we can double grind everything, and then we get $3,700 in sales. The key is we still end up having to double grind it anyway, from what I remember. Correct?
Well, we don't have to. It's
But-
more valuable, and we end up having a surplus due to the limitation of how much
We
we
can
could
all-
actually put on the property. So we end up basically giving it away to, like Homer Tree Care, for example. They'll come in with their semis and we'll load them up. We just don't have enough room throughout the season at specific times.
Gotcha. Because if we didn't double grind it, we'd have to haul it away. They wouldn't want to end up picking it up, correct?
More than likely, and Chris, I think you can comment on
Yeah,
that as well.
this year we did get a little lucky. Homer did take some of the single ground stuff off of our hands for us just loading it. They had talked about possibly charging us. I don't remember what that fee was, but we have in the past had to pay. We used to take them down off Lamont Road by the canal there, and it was, I think, $15 to $25 a load on our trucks when we were getting rid of it. So, you know, there is a potential that if we didn't double ground them, we would have to pay to get rid of them.
And this is offset somewhat because we do sell the chips
Yeah.
at 35 and 55.
Yeah, we sell them to be delivered. So we deliver them then on Fridays throughout the year to residents. And yeah,
That was the sales part, Mike. I don't know if you missed that, 3,700.
For a little, yeah. Okay.
Nodding off.
We're gonna move on before people fall asleep. To operating, 4253, office supplies. Okay. 4257, other supplies. Yes, Tom?
You have signs and accessories on here. How often do you guys use new signs, or is that for rental? Because I noticed just barricade maintenance.
Signs and accessories are for maintenance signs, whether it's stop signs, poles, speed limits, things of that nature that throughout the year need to get replaced.
Okay.
Do we budget for, oh, never mind. As soon as I asked a question, I saw it. Never mind.
I'm going to flip over to page 48, where we're continuing on with supplies other.
Yeah, my-
And we have a couple asterisk items, the ThermaPoint and the sign inventory software.
ThermaPoint is the salt additive for applications with the salt. $32,000 is in this account. Currently, under MFT, ThermaPoint is not an accepted product. So we're going to try to continue to work with IDOT and Springfield to be able to get that classified as a approved item. But again, it's a salt additive enhancement, which is good for the environment, and it's a proven product that we've worked on for over the last 2 years, if you want to say, or 3 to 4 years with research.
It's up a couple $1,000s. Is that price increase or volume increase?
Well, right now, it's a combination of both. So I want to be prepared, use less salt. Maybe this product, the enhancement, will offset it. And I know salt, I'm looking at probably close to $82, $84 upcoming for next contract, from what I'm understanding. So could that
Wasn't it 67 this year?
82, I believe, is 82 or 80, Chris?
Was it 82?
it's
Really?
82.69, I think,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Are we going to need 3,000 tons this year, or?
No, we're currently at budget right now, depending on what the next several weeks does. We might be slightly over.
Okay.
The motor fuel fund the motor fuel fund can support it. If we're gonna be over, I wouldn't be more than by $10,000.
Gotcha.
I have one quick question, go back on signs, Dan. Who maintains the stop signs within the shopping center itself?
The private owners, the developers.
Okay,
I
so
know-
if there's one that needs to be replaced, who do we contact it?
It all depends on which management it is. I know we in the past have done a reciprocating, or a chargeback, if you want to say, if something is in bad condition and it's a public safety hazard. Yes, we will go in there because it makes sense.
Okay.
Dan, do we regulate if they need stop signs?
Yes, yes,
From the original development, and they have to maintain it? Is that,
yes.
you know, okay.
Yes.
Good question. Okay. So, any more questions on ThermaPoint?
Just the only question I got is what's the holdup with Illinois? Why they haven't approved it?
Why is the state?
Yeah,
Why, oh why?
I
Can you
figured-
sing a song for us, Joe Kenny, about that one?
I could probably do that.
And then I see that there's an asterisk at sign inventory software, that there was a request for $2,800, but it's not been budgeted.
Correct. Mr. Vanna had pulled that out from the Municipal Services Department once again. With that said, this is software that's with Jeff Cornels is one of the gentlemen within the department that basically maintains and looks for signs that need to be removed and replaced. He wanted to kick it up a notch, if you want to say, along in line with our ditch maintenance catalogs, our road maintenance catalogs. This was something that he wanted to take on and to be able to say, okay, we have X amount of signs, we have X amount of poles, this is where the signs are, whether it's for future GPSing, GIS systems. That was the goal of this.
Good call, Brian.
Do you notice when Brian puts stuff in, it's Brian, and when he takes stuff out, it's Mr. Vanna?
It's okay, I understand.
Any other questions about that item? Okay. If there's no objections, I'm going to move on to small tools and equipment, 4259. We have an item called mechanics lift. I'm sure everyone heard all about that when they toured the municipal services facility, but there is backup in the binder for that. Starting on page 75, submitted by Tom, our mechanic. Discussion.
Well, I have no comments really to remove and replace, and it's a vital piece of equipment that is obviously for the equipment.
Your mechanic needs to have that, and just it's from a safety standard, from a safety suspect reason alone. You know, I've worked on big equipment where you're trying to lay down on a flatbed, little, you know, a creeper, a crawler to get under there. It's wow. More
Thank you, Joe. We have a consensus.
Joe can't get
I think
under
we
there.
have a
I guess we're gonna have
consensus.
to get him.
Joe Hines.
See, I had to stop getting under there. I went into real estate when I started. I couldn't crawl on the bus anymore. But no, I'll kidding aside. That's a very pivotal piece of equipment. You know, I think you are crazy for us not to have that.
If we're going to repair vehicles, we need it. There's really not an
Right.
if on
It's-
this.
yeah,
It was
right.
just, it's a larger expense, so we included it.
But I've
Thanks,
seen,
Brian.
but I've seen what
You're welcome, Mr. Goldbeck.
that equipment could have been in the past, and I think that's reasonable. I don't think it's too far off.
And I just want to clarify, just so everybody is aware, this lift will still not give us the ability to put our 9 and 11 ton dump trucks up on a lift. So he's still going to have to use a crawler, a creeper,
in that case, forget
to get
about
under
it.
that. So this gets us the mid-size vehicles up onto a lift more safely, the F-350s, the F-550s, and that's
In that case,
really.
Mr. Vanek, keep
Do we have the
keep it up.
ability, Chris, to put in a larger,
Yeah.
I believe when
lifts that would handle the
one
larger trucks?
The larger trucks, we looked at. They make like a storable, like kind of a maneuverable,
The portable ones?
system. Yeah, where it lifts it up at the wheels.
You
The problem
get four of
is
them,
you have
put
to
on
have
the
the
wheels.
space in order to store those, and we don't have the space to store those because our building's too small.
There we go. Okay, that's the
Hey,
that's
Mr.
the bottom line
Thank
there,
you,
gentlemen.
thank you, Mr.
Bottom line.
Fromm.
Bigger lift, but we don't have a place to put
We can
it.
either go 55,000 or 15 million. I don't know which one we're going with right now.
Okay.
Currently, we're at the 55.
Sounds like a consensus.
Okay, I think we have a consensus on the mechanics lift.
And you still need a
Moving
crawler.
on to training and education, 4263. Any questions? Okay, uniforms, 4269. Moving on to operating, 4271, utilities, 4273, vehicle, gas and oil. Okay, going to move on to contractual services, 4325.
Stop here for a second.
Yes.
Dan, last year we had the Dale Basin, 3750 under discretionary. That's something we don't do every year, right? Are we putting it under mandatory this year because it's the year to do it, or what happened there?
I'd have to look at the rest of the backup, but 3750 I know is a good number. I just went through that contract, and I forgot if there's another burn schedule for that But you're saying 3750 was budgeted for last year?
Well, yeah, but we had it in discretionary. This year we
Didn't
have
we
the same
cancel it?
amount in maintenance.
Just burnt the fence.
I'm sorry, it wasn't discretionary last year?
It wasn't discretionary, Dan.
Yeah, and that was probably the first year of the agreement at that point, but we could double check it, see what that's for. I know I have it in here. But I can give the answers back to everyone.
Okay.
I didn't see it for last, I got last year's budget, I didn't see the Dale Basin in it. Or am I
Yeah,
missing it?
last year it was in mine for last year, 3750 was under discretionary.
Discretionary.
Might be an annual, I'll double check it.
Okay. Anything else on that? Dan will get back to us on Dale Basin. Okay, I'm going to move on to forestry, 4350. Anything on fertilization?
You know, maybe at this point, Dan, there's a lot of changes to this.
Right.
If, I don't know if you want Dan
A lot
to
of
cover
backup,
kind of
too.
conceptually what we're looking at in terms of maintenance or line by line, it's up to you.
Right, or if you want to just explain I guess, like, is there a master plan, or like if you want to just do an overview?
Let me do an overview.
And just so you know, everybody, it starts on page 77.
And the items that
Back up.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The items that we're looking at are the asterisked items. Again, this is for the 75th Street planters, the mulch area, which includes weeding. The next one includes entranceway signs, the mulch area, weeding, again, 8 locations, referred to as item B. The clock tower mulch area weeding, which is 1 location, this is item C. In the City Hall complex, the mulch areas, the rock landscaping, again, that's 1 location referred to as item D. Current prices for these items that are currently under a vendor outsourced are $4,000, $2,575, $2,500, and $2,000, respectfully. We are looking at an increase from the first line item A from $4,000 to $25,450. Next line item from $2,575 to $5,000. Next line item from $2,500 to $13,800. And the next line item from $2,000 to $14,000. The primary question is why? Dissatisfaction of the service that has currently been in place. We feel, the staff feels that there's optimal levels that the landscaping should be kept up to. We've seen weeds time after time again throughout the months, whether it's as soon as April starts. We've had excuses from the vendor that whatever, ranging from bad weather to the weeds are growing faster than we can pick them, whatever the case is. We have emails that have gone back and forth with this vendor. We do realize it's a drastic increase. The bid that we recently received is the accurate pricing that's on here. That would be a bid pending consideration from the city council, that it would be brought forward for consideration at the next municipal services meeting, so we could have a plan to start May 1st. I'd be more than happy to entertain any questions from the council in respect to this.
In addition, to just add, the numbers that we have under maintenance and discretionary are carried forward in the second and third years. So as you're talking about these increased prices, I do have them built into the second and third years. So any decisions you make we'll have to adjust 3 years out.
The goal of this is for the optimal landscaping along our main corridors, including the clock tower and the city hall.
Did you cover the irrigation, Dan? I stepped out for a
No, the
No,
irrigation, we
that's
didn't get to
the
that
other-
item yet.
Dan, is it, that, I know it covers like mulch and weeding, but does that cover for any new plantings or anything like that
Yes, there is some contingency for new plantings as well.
in these prices?
I believe there's certain items, whether they're mulch and/or flowers, but we do have a separate contingency for flowers, adding them or whatever the case is.
And that, is that, where's
I'd-
that at?
I'd have to double check it. to
Okay.
make s- And again, typically what I do is I put about $3,000 in there for contingency related to plants, so let's see, tree replacement residential.
While Dan's looking for that, any other questions for him regarding this new proposed pricing and change in vendors and care for our areas?
Dan, I think you pointed out to me that this is the same landscaper who does the Bolingbrook medians.
The proposed, correct.
Proposed, yeah. So if you've gone down Boughton Road towards the shopping center and you've admired how beautiful those trees and everything, it's the same landscaper.
And as a matter of fact, they also have a contract on Plainfield Road, north and south side, from 75th Street up to, I think it's Lamar Road. They maintain the right-of-ways on Plainfield/83rd Street.
So who did we use last year?
Remember the name of the company? Let's just say Tower. I know it's not Tower Works. I'd have to look it up.
I mean, it just seems like so dramatically different.
Well, we increased the scope, just so we're clear.
Yeah.
It wasn't just we're going to switch bidders. Dan increased the scope to get these areas to a point where we think now they will look nice with the scope of services. So that's, that's primarily the increase in price, right, Dan? If we stayed with like the current services or scope, we'd probably be looking just at the maintenance.
Would be a little bit higher.
So a little bit higher, but it's our scope. We asked for more.
All right.
Part of
That
it
makes
is our,
more sense.
yeah, part of it is our scope that's driving this due to the amount of hours that are not currently being spent here to eradicate weeds.
But it's what we asked for, basically.
Okay. So we're not comparing apples to apples. It's something totally different where we're getting
Correct.
more
Plus,
service.
while that is true,
Substantially.
the service that was provided by the current vendor was not
No,
satisfactory.
I understand that
Right.
part. I'm
Okay.
just,
Yes, you are correct.
So Dan, it's safe to say then, if we wanted to stick with what we're at now, you're just looking at the maintenance line item on the left.
Correct.
That's what it would be.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this includes 75th Street, obviously, from what I read. I know I'm jumping ahead on the irrigation system. Is the irrigation system needing to maintain this? Because I'm going to ask that
That's an
question.
enhancement. That enhancement is for those months of June, late June, July, August, September. If you look at those plantings are thriving, are not thriving, are, need to, basically dying in some cases. Even though they're water tolerable plants, they have no life to them or lack of life to them during those summer months.
Right now, we truck them, right? And use the truck to,
As much as we could, really it's useless, just due to the other areas that we have to water restoration. We just cannot keep up with enough watering on 75th Street alone, especially with the restorations that we have in place going through the summer months.
You're using the water trucks when you put new sod in on your ditch project.
That is correct. Well, it's facade projects, restoration projects, from Public Works, from Water Department, trees.
And this is just, again, as Dan mentioned, really an aesthetic project. We want those areas that we've invested a lot of money in to look better. This is a way to do it. If you're happy with the way they look, Dan and I weren't, and the mayor, we thought this areas should be kept up and look better.
Yeah, that part. I think that's way low. I won't argue that, right?
Are there any more questions regarding this?
So-
The changes, the scope of work?
Just, it doesn't make sense to do this unless we're putting an irrigation system in.
The irrigation system helps. And again, the irrigation system helps to get the colors out there.
Well, no, I understand that, but I'm like, the 75th Street maintenance is $28,450. It would seem to me that if plants are still dying because they're not getting enough water, it would be a
Well,
waste of $25,000.
I won't say they're all dying. They look very
28,000.
peaked
I
at
know,
best.
I know.
Yes.
They're not
And Tom, the
performing
first
like you'd like them to.
right, and the first line item in the 4,000, you said you say 25 or 29,000?
25,450.
Because 25,450 is what was being proposed to be utilized, whereas the 4,000 would then go away.
Oh, I didn't know
Okay,
that.
I was looking at
No,
the handwritten number.
Oh, I'm sorry, it is 29,450.
Because they break it down
Yes,
for the
yes,
entire,
I'm sorry.
it's 29,450. Do
So
you feel
the-
like they go, I guess, I think Tom's
28,
asking, do
yeah,
they go
I think
hand
it's
in
an eight.
hand with the irrigation system? Like, if, say, the board did not support the irrigation system, do you still feel like the additional funds are key to the entryways, roadways enhancements?
I think they're key, yes.
Well, Dan, it's not just, maybe we all need to understand this extra along as an example, 75th Street. I know a lot of it is weeding, it's litter pickup, right?
Right.
It's gonna make that
Trimming.
area, I'm sorry, what is it?
Trimming of the bushes.
Trimming of the bushes, so.
So that has nothing to do with irrigation.
Correct.
It's separate. Irrigation will certainly
Right,
be
make what's there look better.
Yes, just like if you had a home garden, you want to take care of the weeds and all that, but if you're not going to water it, it's not going to maybe look as bright, and it might not grow as well, but it's still going to look better because you're maintaining the massive amount of weeds that pop up and the litter that accumulates in those areas.
I think the difference is Bolingbrook, for example, Route 53, I-55 off of, towards 53, they irrigate that, and you could just see the vibrancy in it from the result of that.
Well, the other thing too is you said the irrigation system was set up so that it's not going to go on if it's raining. It would, there's.
Correct, it's a lot of, everything is very conservative with the irrigation systems today, and again, once we get into the irrigation system, we want to do a pilot program, what is really what we're asking for at this point, but I'll explain that once we get into that portion of it.
So going back to the plantings, the mulch, the maintenance, I should say, more so the maintenance of these areas, okay? So you're not looking at spending a lot of money necessarily on new plantings, you're just talking about making what we have look better by having it better, more taken care of.
That is correct, and again, I just reviewed some of the notes. I did not include a contingency, which is approximately $4,000 I would include for additional plantings. I know that some plantings have to get replaced already. They were pulled out late last year, so again, the way we would do that was we would purchase the plants from a local hidden gardens, in this case, local nursery, and we would have more than likely the vendor plant them at an hourly rate.
Yeah.
One of the things I think is a good idea to invest in is that we get a lot of our revenue from sales tax from businesses downtown. We've invested in upgrading the Dunkin' Donuts, and I think it goes along to make sure in the summer that we update the landscaping. People driving through, just seeing around these businesses, Starbucks, Nothing Bun Cakes. Hey, this is well kept up. I'm going to stop by, get a coffee, or whatever the case may be, versus maybe going down half a block or to Westmont where it's not that well taken care of. I don't think I want to stop here, right? So I see this as also an investment in our town, but also to the businesses that are right there, and we'll be able to take advantage of better landscaping and better visibility just downtown. So I sort of look at it from that level.
Anyone else have any comments?
I just got a quick question. The numbers on pages 78 and 79 don't add up to what's on 77. Is there some
Yeah, probably a
contingency built in?
revised, it may be a revised bid. I'm not sure which one you're looking at, Tom.
I'm looking at that. And they don't add up to the totals on the actual budget request form.
Yeah.
Because the budget request form's higher.
Correct.
It's gotta be, then the contingency isn't here, it's just not noted in there.
So that's,
29,450.
because it seemed like each item was
Yeah,
a
28,450, so that'd be 1,000.
first one was 1,000 more, yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I did include it, it's just not noted on here.
So that,
yes,
so there
thank you.
wouldn't need to be an addition?
No,
or-
no.
okay.
'Cause I know I usually include contingency, and that's why I probably added a per line item and didn't.
I knew you had it in there. I just
Yeah,
couldn't find it
I didn't realize it. I put it all in the cost per each location.
Okay, and Brian, you'll verify that those numbers with Dan moving forward, if we move forward with this, that,
They are
Which
accurate.
sets?
They are accurate, Mary.
okay,
Tom just
Okay.
showed me what I was.
okay. Any more discussion on those items? On page 48. Do I have any opposition to moving forward with those items in the budget? Okay. We will flip over to page 49.
I'm sorry, also,
Yes.
I mean, we didn't cover those. I don't know if anybody had questions on the rest of the discretionary. Those, above the new items with asterisks is just our fertilization program. I think we
Yeah, I
kind of.
kind of said that in the beginning, and no one was
so
really
we're fine.
questioning
Okay,
it.
just want to
So,
double check.
Under forestry, page 48. Is there any more questions on any of those items? We're going to flip the page to 49. And we have two asterisk items regarding irrigation for 75th Street. One for $15,000 and one for $75,000. And those, backup on those are page 80 and on.
So, first question I'm going to ask is if these are for the medians, this is county, obviously, this is county area, correct?
That is correct. We have a maintenance agreement with the
Which is
DuPage
called-
County.
Which is cool. The question is, if anything ever happens to those medians, does this get destroyed?
The answer is yes. I do want to put the caveat out there, I do not see any major improvements happening for the next, let's see, we're 2040, at a minimal 2040,
So 20 years.
yes.
How far down on 75th Street is this going?
Just on the actual planners, anything that's identified with a planner, and let me take a minute to explain. The first, what we are requesting is the first $15,000, it's a design-build idea. Okay, the design-build idea is that there's several vendors that are involved, meaning A, and just so you know, Chris, he'll be digging, for example, the water main to expose the water main. While we may not have the ability to tap the water main for a service, a vendor would come in and we would pay that vendor to tap the water main, which was referred to as a corporation. Then we would run the copper either under a median or to a location that this would serve. Chris, you're kind of nodding your head, and why? You think I'm?
Well, some of these require directional boring, and some of
Right.
them we don't even have water main by it.
Right, so we're gonna take the ones that are in consider, that are adjacent. We haven't identified any of the areas yet. We're gonna look at the areas with Chris to see, okay, where is water main? What's the feasibility of having it here? In some cases, we might be asking for an easement from a private property owner to be able to run a water line right to the median. Say it's off of, not Sleepy Hollow, Cherokee, for example. So we're gonna look for opportunities to water these. $15,000 may get us only one, may only get us two. So again, it's a design build. We'll have a better idea. To bid this out, we've tried to bid it out, and there's too many variables. The cost would be astronomical.
That's my concern on this whole thing, because know, when we dealt, how many times have we, gone into the ground and thinking, tapping into a water main or something that it's not accurate. It's not because we don't know. Well, we don't know because we don't have the, accurate maps or anything. My concern is, are we gonna, once we start digging, we're gonna, get into something that's gonna be a bad situation.
That's where we have the control, whether we're doing the digging and we're doing the, having a vendor for directional boring, for example, we're telling them where to go. So we have more control. Any unknowns will be identified right away. Really no increase because we're gonna have control boxes. We're gonna know the parameter of what we're trying to water. It's a matter of us getting the source to the median. And the most difficult thing is, as Chris said, there may not be water main adjacent to an island or a median. So that's the most difficult thing that we have to conquer. Is it 300 feet of copper? Is it 100 feet of copper? Is it 200 feet of boring? Is it 100 feet of boring? What opportunities are there? So that's where we have the advantage of really, being economical about this. I guarantee you, if we were to bid this out, we're probably looking at $75,000, $80,000 per location. If we were to have a vendor come in and do this.
And how much would it cost us to just run more water trucks like we do for the sod? Like,
We couldn't run enough, and the reason for that is, you don't want to water after 11 o'clock, and you don't want to start watering again until about 5, 6 o'clock. Just because of how hot the sun is, and so all you're really doing is burning the plants up. Whereas you start early in the morning, you start too early in the morning or too late at night, then you have the effects of mold on the plantings. So we talked about that. And again, there's not enough time or opportunity for us to be able to do that. Whether it's the equipment, just the nature of the beast of when you can really do it.
questions? Any more questions?
So we have 8 beds, and they're the same beds that are identified on page 78 when we were talking about doing the weeding, correct?
That's correct.
It is, because this is new and different, is there any advantage of doing all 8 at once, or would it make more sense, because this is a new project, to pick, Cass Avenue East and West, 4 and 5, and do it this year, and let's see how they turn out, and then look at doing the other ones?
Well, what we'd like to do is take one, identify one, maybe even a more difficult one, and see what opportunities we have for the $15,000. So, wherever that location is. And again, I can't give you that exact location because we need to identify where the water main is and what are the components that are gonna take to do that. So asking permission to do one and keep them, anything that's over $5,000 will come back in here, but we only may have components that make up 3,000 at a time with various vendors and or city staff and or parts. All our parts are already bid out with the exception of irrigation heads and things of that nature. So we would get some quotes for those. So again, just to recap, give us the opportunity to do one for $15,000, bring a report back to the city to let everyone know what we found, what it really costs, and leave the $75,000 as I don't want to say the word contingency, but to be able to authorize staff to continue on based on our performance of what we did.
How long would the turnaround be from the time you did the project to the time you came back to see if you're going to go to second
Couldn't
one?
tell you. It might be 2 weeks, it might be a month.
So what would the timing goal be on this then?
If we were to start this, if we had the opportunity to look at this, we would at least begin to identify things immediately. With the first one, I would anticipate by the end of May, early June, is that we have one completed. And based on that completion, do the analysis, X amount of feet, X amount of heads, so on and so forth, will give us the opportunity to come back and say, we could do the other 8, or we could only do 3 more. And we'll have to budget the rest for next year, or whatever the case is.
We got a lot of other things that have been taken off this budget already for this year. I think it might be, just wise to just try the one and then hold that money off for possibly for next year, because we've got some rear year drainage projects that are been told they're not going on this year, and I think it'd be wise for us to take that step.
And you're looking at doing all this in-house?
Whatever we can do in-house, we don't have, there's gonna be certain vendors we'll need for boring, for example, for tapping.
But you're not going to hire an irrigation company to do this all?
Not all of it, but we will have an irrigation company in there to install the heads and the water pipe
Okay.
that's used for the irrigation and the controller, timers.
Dan, if we're talking the 15,000, are we talking doing the one that's basically at 75th and Cass just?
He's not
I
sure.
don't
he
know
said,
yet.
'cause-
I don't know yet, but I'm not going out with Chris, identifying where water mains are. If there's 200-foot runs, I'm not gonna take a 200-foot run at this point, because I know that the copper itself is gonna be, $3,000 potentially. So we'll take a look at what our other opportunities are. Can we use polyethylene, for example? Those are things that we need to really look at and dissect. So we're really the general in this, and I think we've done a great job in being general contractors on other projects throughout the city.
I'll be honest with you, I would be willing to try 15,000. I don't know if I can support the 75K. I'll be honest with you. There's just so many unknowns that goes with it. You know what I mean?
That's why I was saying, reserve the 75 for a contingency that if we come back and identify that, hey, this is really working out great.
Almost
we
a
would
phase
not-
one, phase two.
Yeah,
and-
exactly. So we would not touch the 75,000 until a report was to come back to city council, stating the performance.
I still say, even if it's great, you wait till next year. Because I think we need the money this year.
Understood?
No 75,000?
Correct.
Let's first see who supports going forward with the $15,000. Can I have a
And
raise of
again,
hand?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this completely. The 15 gets us what?
One location to be watered.
So like a test.
Well, no, but you don't even know if the bed, in theory, could cost more or less than the 15.
If it
'Cause
does,
it's all-
if it does, after the analysis, and again, when I say the analysis, once we look at the entire operation, if it gets to that point, we'll stop it and come back.
Is that before you start digging or while you're digging?
Combination of, no, I feel pretty confident that we can get one done, and I think Chris is doubting me, but that's okay. So, we'll put our heads together, and again, if there's anything that's out of the ordinary.
Dan, you said something about tackling maybe the hardest one first, because that would be probably your highest cost.
Right, while that's the highest cost, I wouldn't necessarily take that one right away, just for the simple reason, see how the operations work. When I say operations, the electric, where's the electric for the timer gonna be? Where's the tap gonna be? How much copper do we need? Everyone's a little bit different.
Which one do you think is the hardest one? Let's ask that question.
Oh, I would probably venture to say by McDonald's, Chris?
No, the water main's right there.
Oh, okay. There you go. There's the first one, so.
Let's do that one.
While we've had some discussions on it, the most complicated one would be,
I would guess somewhere west of Cass, one of those.
Right across from
The one even by Lace School is relatively, there's water main in the northern right of way, like right by the old Lace School and everything, the historical.
Eisenhower.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's probably somewhere up by maybe the one that's up by, I think, like by Adams or up
See,
in that range.
if we're gonna do one, I'd say we do the one that's closest to 75th and Cass Avenue for the highest.
You're not going as far as Williams, right?
Yeah, it's one of them.
well, Williams is one of them, yeah.
Because I think the county's got something lined up from between Lyman to
We
Williams.
don't have any plantings. We don't have any plantings where they're going to be doing their work.
Right.
Yeah, we have no plantings on the area that they're going to. We only put the plantings on the new medians from the project they did a few years ago.
And the county's not willing to kick in for any of this. I mean, I have to ask the question.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I know the
I can tell
answer.
you yes, the answer is no.
It was up to the county, it would just be grass, that whole, all the, the areas.
Concrete.
Although they
It'll be
put in,
concrete.
they did help with
When you thought it was
trees.
grass.
Hey, guys, let's stay on task,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
I'm going to throw out one other idea here, because I have a feeling maybe we can just put the 75, at least the 75 on the back burner, because my feeling is we're going to have some more discussion
Right.
based on Dan's handout tonight.
Right.
In terms of rear yard drainage. If we go adding a major expense for that, maybe the 75 is just not available this year. If that fails, then maybe it is available. but-
Or maybe the 75 is available and we don't do this.
Or we don't do either, and that's capital projects money to transfer, which is
So
what
I
I'm
guess my
trying to do.
question is, just for protocol, it's 9/11. So is everyone here in agreement that we're going to keep talking and go past the 9 o'clock deadline? Clearly, we already have, so that we can kind of talk through this and hopefully move on to the drainage projects tonight?
I think we should try to finish municipal services.
That's what my goal is. I just want to make sure everyone else is on
Oh,
board
it's
with
going to
that.
be a late one.
Well,
But
I mean,
that's
we're
fine with
already.
me. Just, I think the rear yard drainage will
going.
take a while, but.
So is everyone comfortable with us like voting on the 15,000 and then saying we're going to hold off on the 75 and get down to drainage projects? Or do you guys want to hold off on the whole thing until we talk about drainage projects?
Why don't you get through the rest of this before you make a decision to take the 75 out? You may not add any of this back, and the 75 might be easy to keep in. If you're going to add all this back in, maybe you want to take the 75 out.
Right.
Oh, I already want to take the 75 out because we're gonna need to put some drainage money back in.
But not all of us agree that
Okay,
we should be
okay.
adding any of this.
Right now, I feel like we need to have one conversation before we can complete the other, is what I'm sensing.
I'm up for 15,000 on the highest profile location, and that would be Cass and 75th, because that's the heart of Darien right there.
Okay.
So if we're going to do it, that's what I would recommend.
And
Dan,
not
if
to
we did that, would that
complicate.
give us a good, I'm sorry, give us a good idea of what the other ones will be like in the future? I know where you're getting the water from will be different on every one, but
Sure, I think it'll be a good indicator of material, unit pricing of various trades.
Mayor, just for
Yes.
planning purposes, if the council wants to go with the 15 and they want to hold on to 75, I would earmark that in the second year. So, in the plan, so when we were looking at this 3-year picture, if we postpone 75 the second year, it's not really saving money. It's reallocating.
Okay.
Just so everybody's aware, it's not like, oh, here's 75 new, unless you just wipe it all out, then it's at least,
Right.
then it becomes available.
Okay, I'm going to wait for Ted to get back in, even though I think he already said he's comfortable with putting the 15 in for this next year, 21. Do I have a consensus by everyone else here that they are good with the 15? And then I have a sense that no one's comfortable, or most people aren't comfortable with putting the 75 in for 21, and that we're going to, you are comfortable? Okay, so Tom Klistek's in favor of the 75 for fiscal year 21. Is there a consensus by the remaining group, and we'll get Ted when he comes back in, to put 75 in for year 2?
for year two, I'd be in favor of that.
Year 2? So I'm going to wait for, okay, so we've got a consensus to put the 15 in for fiscal year 21, okay? Now we're trying to get a consensus. We had one person that was willing to put the 75 in for fiscal year 21, but now we want to get a consensus to put the 75,000 in for fiscal year 22, the second year.
That's just earmarking.
Just earmark it.
I have no problem.
To vote on it next year. We're pushing it off a year.
I got no problems earmarking it, okay? But like I said, for us to go all in this year on this thing until we know how this first one's gonna, we'd be silly to do it.
Okay.
Nothing, it's not you guys. It's, the story. When we dig underground.
Well, I think
you
this
never-
year's fine. Everybody said 15
Everyone's
this
in
year.
agreement with this
Yeah.
year. And then do I have a consensus for fiscal year 22, 75,000? Just push it off. Earmark it. Earmark it.
I got it.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Did this be 60 if we already spent 15?
No, the 15 separate from the
90 altogether.
75. It's 90 altogether. Okay. We're going to move on. I know Eric, I sensed that he was in favor. Eric, you're in favor of we're going to push 75,000, earmark it for fiscal year 22. Okay. Any other questions on the other items under this account? For forestry, 4350. The residential tree program, anything else? Okay, I'm going to move on then to item 4359, the streetlight operation and maintenance. There is a $10,000 allocation for streetlight requests.
Every year, we've done how many? 2 or 3, Dan?
Correct.
Okay. We always keep this in the budget because there's always somebody that wants to get a street light. So.
Okay. Is there any questions, conversation on that? Okay. 4365, mosquito abatement, we already voted on that in city council. 4373, street sweeping.
Spray my yard.
Okay. I'm going to then say we're going to move right into 4374, drainage projects. I'd like everybody to take the opportunity to pull out this large sheet that was provided to us by Dan.
You'll need one.
And do you want to go on and explain, Dan, the sheet?
Sure.
And I know that the project's been around for several years, and what the thinking is for taking it out of the budget.
First of all, this rear yard drainage project, it was revamped with the funding, I want to say 3 years ago now. I know there was it's formula driven for certain tiers. Those tiers basically are at a $20,000 tier, where the funding mechanism is a little slightly different, and it basically caps out as city participation of not to exceed $50,000 for any projects. There's also different tiers for commercial as well as multifamily. So again, that's just the real down and dirty on it. In respect to the sheets that you have on here out in front of you, you have a section in blue. That section in blue basically allocates what's been allocated for the last couple of years of a city share of $98,000. Now, the project total itself for, I believe it's projects number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 14 projects. For 14 projects, there's an allocation, total project cost of $186,000, of which the city's share would be $98,500, and the resident's share would be $87,000. There's an additional 6 projects that have a potential to be yeses. Now, the reason we don't know any of that to this point is typically we send out letters, a series of letters that says, okay, resident, are you interested? It's a domino effect. So if one resident says no, a second letter gets put out there, and so on and so forth until there's a consensus, or until the residents say that's enough, I don't want to participate anymore. So if we were to include those additional, the total program, total cost would be $252,000, of which the city's share would be $125,000, and then the resident share would be $126,000. So on the project totals, we would have a total of the orange and yellow of $438,000, a city share of $224,000, and a resident share of $214,000. Again, that is if everyone was to say yes today. So really, the two schools of thought from our department is either maintain status quo on a city funding not to exceed $98,000, and put the remainder of the projects into a hold or inventory for the following year.
Dan, I think you need to also add on, though, that under capital projects, we have $441,000 in drainage issues that we're responsible for.
Sure.
So when you're considering this $223,000 expenditure, this is something in addition to the $441,000 that we know we have to spend, which we didn't have last year.
That's correct.
I was going to cover that in my counterpoint, but
I can
we'll
do
wait
that,
till we get
too.
there.
Thanks.
I mean, we're talking almost $700,000 in rear yard, in drainage programs, period. And the council needs to take that in consideration. We have not had, and we may have additional projects that we're responsible for in the future, similar to the $441,000, correct?
Yeah.
mean, if
I
we're
won't
gonna
say
buy
they'll
the-
be of that magnitude. Some of these, I think 2 or 3 of these projects that Mayor Marquez is referring to have been festering for probably 2 to 3 years. The reason for that is we've been trying to maintain them doing spa repairs, jetting, things of that nature. It's just to a point where things are collapsed, they're not working, the pipe is inferior, The installation was inferior. I think the system that's in place right now is pretty much foolproof. Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything in respect to what you found on the old ones?
On the old drainage?
Yes.
Rear yard drainage projects? Yeah, I mean, we found a lot of stuff that just, I mean,
Well, they're not draining. Bottom line,
yeah,
they're
they're
not draining
basically-
properly.
Are we talking the 441?
No, we're talking the capital projects now
Right.
that,
441?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Those we're responsible for, Ted.
Okay. That's.
And the thing is, we've got a $48,000 camera in the budget, and that $48,000 camera may indicate to us that we have other issues. Correct, Chris? I mean, let's
Yes.
be honest.
Yeah.
That may highlight more, so when we say, we don't know if we're gonna have 441 again next year, the camera may tell us that we have 441 again next year, too.
yeah, I mean, just recently, over the course of this fall and winter, we started taking out the drop camera the drop pole camera that we purchased a few years ago and started going subdivision by subdivision, inspecting sewer systems in the street. So that's front yard. In some instances, the mainline drain systems run in the rear yards. But we started inspecting those, and we're finding some problematic areas on those as well. So, I mean, the more you look, the more you're going to find, and I think that's with anything. And, when you have aging infrastructure, it doesn't get better by itself. That's the only caveat I'll make, is that you have to do something to it at some point, typically
And to be
speaking.
quite honest, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of our points of discussion was that if we are facing possible projects like this in the future, maybe the responsible thing is to deal with the issues that we're mandated to take care of versus all these rear yard drainage programs where there's this formula.
Yeah, I mean, I look, again, when I and we put together the budget to give the council, it's a jigsaw puzzle of different things. I didn't look at, well, if we, don't do rear yard drainage, what can we do? I just looked, there's a magnitude of things that municipal services brought forward this year that we have not seen yet, and I think are really important. It's just a matter of priority. Nobody's saying the rear yard drainage projects aren't good, they aren't helpful. That's why I suggested that we continue to help residents, and we could manage the projects, we could bid out the projects. It's just not the financial contribution to the projects themselves. But there's additional projects. There's Sawmill Creek. That's another one that keeps getting requested from municipal services. It's $2 or $4 million, depending on how you look at it. There's a lot of things out there. So as you put the puzzle together, I think it's time for the city to focus the finances on things that are our responsibility to maintain, whether they're the rights of way or the plantings, whether they're our rear yard drainages or other things. And, to just see the rear yard projects grow this year to, 300 or 258, 300,000, and plus our maintenance, it's a lot of money that I think we could spend elsewhere on some other things that did come up as priority.
So here's a question. On these projects that are under blue, what's the difference between the blue and the white? Does the white say add on the blues from last year, or how?
The blue will put us into what's been budgeted for the last couple of years. So I tried to stay at a level funding for the last couple of years, 98,000. So that's the way I looked at it. Anything above and beyond would require more funding.
And the funding for the last couple of years, I think last year we didn't have the 98 in. I think a project was added the day, during the budget, actually the approval.
Yeah.
So we were a little less than the 98 also for a couple of years. And the 98 came about because we added a project last year.
Yeah, it was a resident came in.
Winterberry last year.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead. Last year got increased to the 98, yeah, it was less than that the prior years. The other thing to consider as you're thinking about all of this, remember what I talked about last week, where we look at the end of year 3 in our capital projects fund, we were showing a reserve of $371,000. If we decide to continue this program, just what Dan has on the sheet here, eats into that reserve by $223,000, aside from some of the I don't want to call them errors, some of the changes that we've already made in the budget. The economic incentive decreases us by $50,000. There were some other adjustments that we've made. We don't even know how it's going to affect that 371, but I'll bet you $1 to a donut, it works that 371 down. You add this to it, and I'll bet we're pretty close to zero by the end of that third year. So you keep this project in there as it is, so that's my only input.
Mike, the number you used, I'm not sure, but it's about, what number did you use for the drainage projects? Because it's the
well, over
it's
the
the 258 plus 98.
Well, yeah, over the 2
Okay,
years, it's
got it.
showing 223,000.
Got it, okay.
So if you put that over the 2 years,
Yeah.
that does eat into that 371 by that 223, again, aside from that 50,000 that I know we already have. So again, you're already down to almost no reserve in capital projects. by
How
that.
long have we been doing this? I'm sorry.
We used to have a program with rear yard drainage programs where it was nothing under over $5,000.
And it capped at about $35,000.
Yeah, and we kept it about 35,000, and then we had some of these major projects that were presented to us where they were just exorbitant expenditures for an individual to have to handle them on their own. And so I think the first year we did it, we set a budget, it was 50-something thousand, I think we hit about $72,000, but we were at that level for a while. And we were handling, there weren't a lot of projects, Jan. That 72 was probably 5 or 6 really big projects, I think, that we tackled. And no one doubts the validity and the ability to help people increase their property values by doing this. The thing is, you saw an example last week. We had 2 people sitting there who said they love rear yard drainage programs. Lester noted people called him about it. Tom noted people called him. I mean, we are sometimes the victims of our own good work. It was like the leaf program. We went from 130 tons of leaf pickup to 40 tons, and I said, Sylvia and I said, let's cut that from the budget. Let's cut out the leaf pickup. And I got dastardly emails from people saying, how dare you take away my free leaf pickup, which is not free, but to them it was free. We are the victims of our goodwill and our good work. But the thing is, if you put this money in there this year, when does this end? When do we sit back and say we can't afford this, or what sacrifices are you going to make in the future in other areas? I guess that's the question I'm asking.
Well, the one thing I like about this program is that the residents have a responsibility as well to pitch in on this project. It's not like we're just giving out money and doing projects. They're doing their part too to pitch in.
But Lester, you're spending city money on a private residence versus city money that benefits the entire city.
But I think one happy person in Darien benefits Darien. Like I try to look at customers when I go out and visit customers. I'm trying to improve their experience. I think one happy customer improves the company's experience, and I think that it's important that we do projects like this. You know, especially if they're doing their part. They're giving half, so they're not asking for a handout. They're giving half. So.
One of the things I always think that's critical in these projects is the supervision by the municipal services staff, the supervision of the projects, the bidding, the management of the projects, and we're kind of giving a discount to that, but that is critical because it would be very hard for residents to go out, send their letters, collect the money, do all these things. So I think there is a value to that we're participating. Again, it just becomes a matter of where the dollars should go.
Question, on projects here 31 through 50, okay? Obviously, we've told every resident under the sun that it's all depends on budget and go from there. But with that said, what have we really told these people besides the fact are they interested in doing it and it's budget constraints, and when did they apply for these? I'm talking the ones just in the white section right here.
They're about overall about a year.
And I believe, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, every letter says pending budget approval.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't say we're going to do these projects.
Well, I think Ted alluded to that, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. And I guess the question is, if that's the case for the section in white, what about the section in blue? I'm assuming that's over a year, correct?
No, they're all approximately a year.
Okay, just came in order, basically.
Right. Last year we had no inventory. While we had no inventory, there was a couple danglers out there, and after, well, like I said, within the last year, they basically came back to life and said, yeah, we want to do it.
You used the blue to come up with the $98,000 figure.
Correct.
To come up with the annual amount that we've been spending on it, I think is what.
That's
the
how we
reason.
determine, that's what I'm curious
But do
about.
people get priority based on, like, first in kind of thing, or is it?
First come, first serve. I did throw a couple projects, let's see, 20, my numbers where it says Dan project number 23, 21, and 20.
And also note
29,
that
I'm sorry. I put those up because we had good participation, we had good momentum for those projects to be going, whereas the projects in white are all very debatable still.
What I
When you
just
mean debate, I'm sorry, Joe.
right.
Debatable because the flavor that's coming back is, on the comments that I've received, and you can see responses on the first letter, it doesn't seem positive. So as the domino effect continues with a second and third letter, I anticipate that the project will fizzle out. That's just based on,
Based on what you're showing, but the ones in blue seem pretty positive.
yes.
If I just took the ones in blue and the ones that didn't have second letters or third letters sent out,
Right?
I added those projects up on our share alone.
Sure.
And it came out to be $72,089.44.
Okay.
So if we don't do any, I mean, I don't say we're doing all of them, but I would like to see at least the $72,000 worth of projects, this year going forward.
Less than that.
I'm sorry?
So are you talking like the ones that just have all yeses and letter sent, second letter sent, third letter sent column?
So the only projects I didn't
So
add up,
0, 1, 6, 10, 16, 11, 12, 13, and 14 under Dan's numbers?
Ending at 618 Maple Lane.
well, wait a minute. Number 23, we have a consent. They were here last meeting, so we need to keep that in the. Even though there wasn't a second or third letter sent, those are
we're seeing
Right, because we stopped sending
project
letters.
23
We stopped sending letters
under
out.
Dan.
There's no project.
But, hold on for a second, my apologies.
Chris project.
Line, Chris project number 51, 1521 Evergreen.
Yours is
Okay,
More
there's
than
no
likely
response on
That's my
that.
number.
More than likely, that one's gonna go away.
Yeah. The only ones I didn't on your numbers that I didn't add for that $72,000 number was number 29, number 21, and number 26.
You didn't add those?
I did not add 26. I did not add 21. I did not add 29. I added the remaining blue, and I came out with $72,089.44 as a city share.
And you're probably correct. I looked at it from a perspective of what we spent in the last couple of years. So that's the way I looked at it. There's no magical formula to my,
$72,000 number comes in line with what the mayor just said out of a consistency today. And I know we just took $75,000 and we just kind of pushed it to next year.
It's still there, though. It's still there in that 3 years. It doesn't go away, that you're 75.
Well, we could remove it,
No,
right?
we cannot save 75.
But we're not spending it this year.
But by
We
the end of the third year,
By the end of
you're
the
still
day,
down
we
to
could
zero.
we could have spent that 75 and it was gone and you'd have nothing done.
I guess the question, and you brought it up, Dan, is the sections in white, there's not been a positive response for it. And I'm sorry, to go into that section for $251,000 with $125,000 share, when we don't really have that much positive feedback on it, it's not worth it. The blue section, I'm for it. I'll be, but I'm trying to figure out how you're coming up with I missed your numbers on it.
He's not.
He's excluding the things. that
He's
are
excluding
What else
29,
is there?
21, and 26.
26, 21, and 29.
I didn't even look at what addresses there were. I just looked at who's responded and who responded positive.
good answer, Joe.
And one of my ward is in there and I didn't do it. So
So the question is if we turn around and these are taken care of for this year, under the premise that the people that are at home saying that, this is probably where it's going to end at, okay? Going forward, this is probably it, and that's the reality. Yes, we never made a promise, I get it, all right, but The fact is that at least it's a situation where we take care of these, but, you know, and again, the program just kind of fizzles out, I guess, because the fact is that we had for so long, 3 years in a row, where we had people say, we want these to get fixed and go from there with these projects. And the mayor's right. Yeah, we're the victim of our own success. But at the same time, if it's a situation where we take care of the people that we've taken care of in a row for 4 years, and this is the last of it, with the people at home, this is it. We got to let them know that, basically.
I think I think that, let me see if I'm hearing you correctly. You're saying, deal with these projects up here in the blue, but let it be known from this point on that we will act as facilitators in terms of these rear yard projects, but we won't put city money toward that.
That's probably about it, because the people in the white that have responded, I mean, even the section here, you got some responses that goes forward, yes, you know, but, I mean, we're talking some serious amount of money that we're going to be going with and going forward, you know, and that's the reality. You know, I'm just looking, there's got to be a happy medium, you know, that's the reality of this whole thing. So, I don't know.
I have a quick question about you've indicated under capital projects, I'm not looking to switch budgets, but that we have a line item this year of $441,000 that has not been there before.
Well,
To
it's
drainage
it's-
projects.
I'm sorry.
Correct, and those are basically, again, we can run to that section real quick.
But you're saying that in the past, there was no expenditure for that in the budget?
But there was, we had,
Type of drainage project.
Yeah.
It's a different type of drainage.
well, right, but we've had a couple of those over the last year, I believe we had
Yeah, I
one
thought
or
there was.
two. The year before.
Maybe 20,000, 15, right, Dan?
But you're
They've
saying
been
there's a
very
significant
minor.
increase under capital projects of drainage projects that are on city property that
Are
need
newly
to be-
identified.
Right,
That are newly identified.
yes.
Okay, well, I'm a big advocate of this program, and I really thought it was important to get this talked about today. We've been doing this, I think, since I've been on, and it did start out at $36,000 a year, and we did that for the first couple of years, and it became successful when we bumped it up to $72,000. And last year we had budgeted at 72, and then someone came in at the last minute. We bumped it up to 98. I don't think we should get rid of the program. I don't even say we should do 98,000 this year. We did it last year because it just happened that way. I always thought the understanding was it was a first come, first serve. And when we hit our 36 or 72 or whatever number we picked, we stopped that year. And the other person said, well, you're in line for next year. And I have no problem with having it go that way. I'm not asking that we do 98. I'm not asking that we do 223,000. I'd like to see us budget somewhere between $36,000 and $72,000 on a first come, first served basis and do those projects this year. And we can look at it again next year and hopefully do the same thing.
Tom, I'll throw in the other $89.44, okay?
Okay.
Anyone else have comments or suggestions? Okay.
Crazy question. With the projects that we have assigned on the city's behalf, will address any of the residents' issues? So if they're overflowing, for example, water in a pond that we're responsible for going onto private property, if we address the issue on the city's share, will it potentially address any of these residents that have issues as well? Are our properties close to our projects? Maybe it's a simpler question.
And again, I think what you're referring to specifically, Tom, is Sawyer. Sawyer Road is.
Oh, just in general, yeah, just in.
Well, it's not in general because not all of Darien has situations like you have in your ward. I think you're unique, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. Again, there's parts of Farmingdale Drive, Sawyer Road that basically those residents have nowhere to drain the water to except to the front of the house. With that said, we've created some programs that'll basically follow the policy, if you want to say, of the rear yard drainage program, except allows them to drain in the front with a cost share. So to answer your question, the answer is yes. If not, we're going to continue. As long as residents don't discharge their sump pumps or gutters into the sidewalk, public right-of-way where it causes a liability issue, it is what it is. If Mother Nature's natural course is to drain across the sidewalk and onto the curb and gutter, and it freezes, so be it.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to first put out a scenario. I would like to get a consensus of those who are in favor of completely eliminating the rear yard drainage project for 2020. If you want to raise your hand. So we've got one person who's in agreement for eliminating it. Okay,
I missed a question. I apologize. I was talking to the treasurer.
it's okay. I'm looking for a consensus for scenario number one of those in favor of completely eliminating, as presented in the budget, the rear yard drainage project for 2020, putting no money in the budget. And Eric raised his hand. Okay. So then I guess my next scenario is, what's the right number? And is the right number moving forward the number that we've budgeted the last several years, $72,000? Or do we reduce it to $36,000, like Alderman Belzak said, and have it be on a first-come, first-served basis? And just look at it for fiscal year '21, and do we put it in for the 3 years out, or do we just do it for the fiscal year '21? Lester?
I would suggest that what you do is you pick a figure, and municipal services goes back and debates. Municipal services came up with the formula that Dan uses. It took us about 5 months to do that. And I suggest municipal services goes back, and municipal services comes back with a recommendation after the budget's done in terms of funding amount, similar to the ditch project, the ratings, what's worse, how to handle it in terms of a priority, and that'll help you set an amount in the future. If you're gonna fund all these and you're gonna put all these back and spend $98,000, then spend the $98,000. But determine in the future how you prioritize and a limit, and make municipal services have that responsibility and do that.
I don't know that I heard there's interest for the second and third years. Maybe I'm missing that. I think I heard from Ted, make it final. I think Tom was saying not, so I'm.
Right, there's
Yes.
all these different,
Got it,
Ted's
okay.
theory was, let's fund
Yeah.
the blue zones minus maybe one or two that Joe Kenny proposed, and say, now we're done with it. Tom Belzak doesn't want it to go away.
Got it, okay.
So I think we're just trying to figure out, I guess, right now, the major concern for me is trying to figure out how we proceed with fiscal year '21.
Guys, let me be clear on something here, okay? One of the reasons why I'm saying about possibly eliminated for next year, all right, it is a terrific program. Here's the situation, okay? Every year that we've done this, we've had people that have come on in and say, I really need this to get done. The reason I brought that statement up is because a lot of the ones that are in the white section down here, they're not really turning around and being responsive or being responded back. Now that could change next year. We don't know. Okay, but the fact is that you got projects right off the bat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 projects right off the bat. Okay, that are in the blue that are 67,000, which we could take care of 10 different projects, even if you eliminate the final 3. I'm not saying to do that, I'm just being realistic, okay? If you guys didn't want to spend the 98, okay? I'm just going in order and going from there, because it's a situation where people really want to get these things done, and they want they want to get them taken care of. That's all. That's how I'm looking at it.
Well, and aren't we putting the onus, if we were to move forward putting any funding in this, the onus is being put back on municipal services to make that determination. We're not sitting around deciding who gets what project. It's municipal services' job to do that, correct?
Well,
I don't think we ever did we?
no, right now, the pecking order is the way it's proposed.
Okay.
Whether it's 10
Right.
projects, 5 projects, 2 projects, the way it's presented is the order that it would flow in.
Yeah, but Dan, you used to prioritize based on when you got the request from the resident.
First come, first served.
First come.
That's the way this is done.
And what
So
we
these are
really
first
need
come,
to
first
do
served.
is We really, just like the ditch program, just like the ditch program, we prioritize the worst ones. The road was gonna be next year, we do the ditch. This needs to be prioritized that way so that we don't have these people walking in like they did last year, and all of a sudden we went from 72 to 98,000.
Well, that happened because it got added on last.
Right.
And
But what I'm saying is, I'll be quite honest. I think that this would be the best year to cut it off and say, we're done. I'm not hearing that from the council, but I like Ted's suggestion. You fund this year, and then you let people know that next year we'll just be the facilitators. We'll be the ones who assist you by noting the contractors and stuff. I think there's legitimacy there. Frankly, I'd like to know how many more people on the council would support what Ted suggested.
Right, you're recommending to set that expectation for people.
I
You're
think
saying
that
phase it out completely, right? After
Guys,
after
I
this
just
year.
said it, and,
Yes.
okay, one more time, all right? Right now, you're looking at this situation in the white section where people are not really responding for it, okay?
well, we haven't sent out any more follow-up letters.
Okay, all right. The point is that if it's coming down to a situation where we have to let people know that, with the budget constraints that's happening, that's going forward, that it's most likely not going to happen, we got to tell them that. But the point is that to turn around and say, this blue section, sorry guys, forget about it. I think we're doing a disservice, especially for the people in the blue section right now that have been expecting or hoping that we turn around and fund this, okay? I'm not, you know me, I don't talk out of both sides of my mouth, I don't, all right? But there's a lot of, there's a lot of caveats going on with the ditch projects going forward. Here's the big question that I have. How many miles do we have left for actual ditches in the city of Darien?
2.5, 3.
Okay, 2.5. When are we gonna be completed with that?
But this year, we're not proposing to do any, to be honest with you.
Next
So
year, I think.
Next
yeah,
year, I
next
think
fiscal
we have
year, you had a
one,
few
yeah.
in, and
Yeah,
that
but
was
it's
it,
really
probably.
de minimis in the grand scheme of things.
But the point is that we've taken care of it, the situation on a grand scheme of 28, 29 miles to make sure the water's flowing away, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The point is, in this situation, going back to private residence, yes, it's private residence, yes, I get it. Yes, I understand it's not for everybody. However, it's also a situation that we're gonna turn around and take care of them because a lot of these houses were, built a long, long time ago. The point I'm trying to make is that I would definitely say, if we're gonna do this for this 98,000, do the ones in the blue, okay? And we gotta tell people going forward, next year, that it's not not 100% guarantee, okay? Every year we've told people going forward, okay, that we talk about doing rear yards drainage, projects. People like it, people are on the list and so forth, okay? The point is, we don't know where we're gonna be going forward after this. Sorry, it's a first come, first served basis, I get it. But you know what? The projects we've done for the last 5 years have had people saying, you've really helped us on out. So I'm just gonna say, there's not a 100% guarantee that we might do this again, but I'm saying we go all in on the 98,000 for the blue and be done with it for this year. That's my recommendation.
Okay. We've got different scenarios. We've got the recommendation of going in for all the blue for 98,000. There was also the discussion of going back to the original budget amount of 72,000, which was what was proposed last year and then was changed to 98.
It's 98, yeah, 98,000.
Right, but it was originally 72 and then it was changed to 98, correct?
We added one.
Last year.
But in prior years to that, it was 72,000,
That
correct?
sounds right, Mary. We don't have those in front of us.
Okay.
The budget we're looking at was just for last year. We'd have to do a little digging, but I believe those are the accurate numbers,
I think
yes.
we were, one year we were like 50-something thousand.
Yeah.
And 72 was last year,
But then 72 got changed to
98.
I got last year.
98.
Yes.
Originally, it was going to be 72.3.
Oh, 70, yes.
And then we
yes.
made it 98.
Correct. Okay, got it,
So it
yes.
was 98 for the last two.
I guess the question going back, not to cut you off, my apologies, going back to number 51, this 1521 Evergreen, it's got nobody responded, but it's in the blue. That's where I'm confused at, the project.
50, yeah, it's a one-person, it's a one-person program. More than likely, he's going to be participating. I feel pretty good about that. again, if he doesn't, then we remove it. I just did not want to not include him. This is an ongoing issue for this resident that recently moved in 2 years ago, and the previous owner did not want to participate. So it really, bottom line, it causes a bottleneck. So it's no different than a lot of the other ones.
That's fine.
But that's why.
That answers, that suffice.
Ted,
Gotcha.
Ted, are you saying do the 98,000 this year, but then let people know that in the future, we'll just be the facilitators?
That's what he said.
I am saying that do the 98,000 this year, okay? We're gonna have this discussion again next year. We don't know where our budget's going, okay? I get it. We have, we're also, Mike's talking about the fact that, at the end, we're dealing with capital projects. It is a good program for people, okay? And we've also set the expectations that we're gonna be taking care of them. No, we didn't guarantee it, sorry, okay? But we're gonna have this discussion back and forth, okay? We're gonna have the discussion again next year, all right? I'm not saying, okay, in any way, shape, or form that I'm 100% gonna cut this off. I'm never gonna say that, okay? But the fact is that the projects we've done in the last 5 years, including the sections in blue, we've had extremely well response back to, all right? And we also got to remember, we're also going to be finishing off the ditch projects for the city that's been 28, 29 miles, okay? We're going to be saving some money there. No, it's going to go more expensive. We got the pension to pay for it, for the police. I get it. The point is we're going to go back and forth in this section right now about this blue, okay? And let's turn around and, support the 98,000. But we better tell the residents at home, there is no guarantees going forward that this is going to happen in the future. We have to let them know that expectation. Because last year in this conversation, we basically have turned around and said, we're going to do it again next year. Next year, we're definitely going to do it. I'm telling you right now, there's no guarantee for next year. That's what I'm saying.
Chad, with all due
I disagree
respect,
with
all
that.
our letters have identified that it's all, pending budget considerations, so we were
True.
very cautious on that as well.
I think we've always told them that it's pending budget
Right.
consideration, so.
I don't think
disagree-
anyone's been,
I
promised.
disagree with you there, Ted. I guess what I'd actually rather see is if you like this program and people are expecting it, that you decide on a dollar amount. Don't say that it's pending budget. Now you're ruining people's expectations, or you're getting them excited. You're causing a lot of paperwork for Dan. Decide an amount, whether it's $30,000, $50,000, $70,000 a year. This is what it is. And we're not going over that. And then let Dan, however, based on either first come, first serve, or based on the need-based.
Right.
but
Or
at
maybe
least have-
the formula gets modified so that more projects can be done, but maybe the allocation between city and resident is skewed so that more can be done to help subsidize residents. Otherwise, like Mike said, you're setting an expectation. Residents might put off doing it on their own because there's an expectation that the city is going to fund it the next year or the following year. And so if we keep saying it's going to happen and then it doesn't happen, I mean, it's always subject to review at budget time. But if there's a consensus, we have one consensus that it's eliminated starting next year. Is there another consensus that it's eliminated after we fund it one more year? Does anyone feel that way?
No.
Okay, so the feeling is we want to keep the program going at least in the next 3 years, possibly.
Raise your hand.
Subject to budget.
Right. It would- Obviously, figuring out what we spend.
So now we
is-
got to
is what
figure
we
out
need
what's
to
the
figure.
dollar amount, okay? We want to keep the program going to some degree moving forward, subject to budget review every year, but setting that expectation for residents. What's the dollar amount?
I think Belichick had a dollar amount earlier.
Well, we originally had 36, and then we moved it to 72. Personally, I would propose keeping it at 72. And if we want to earmark 36 for next year so people know what we're thinking of doing for next year, we can do that. And obviously, it'll be subject to us looking at it next year.
Okay?
Can I ask a question? You got four projects down in the white that are showing yes, no, yes. You also have projects that are in blue that are showing yes and no. So, from response, what's the difference between the white and the blue in those instances?
in those particular cases, the blue ones that have one yes, I've been in conversation with 3 of those projects, and they're in the affirmative that they're gonna move forward. Okay, so I wanted to at least preclude them within this 98,000 if that was gonna happen.
But you've got nothing in writing.
No, we basically have to memorialize, and again, if we don't get them, then they go away. We don't use the monies. I mean, there's gonna be a letter that's gonna come back to city council, or a memo is gonna come back to city council authorizing the following projects at a not to exceed, whatever the magical number is gonna be. And again, if those, to your point, Joe, if those 3 residents don't commit, by the time we create the agenda memo, it's done.
And Dan, has there been circumstances where people say yes, and then they find out they're the only person, and the check is a lot larger than they thought it would be, and they decided to back out?
That's exactly it. You know, especially in the whites, especially in the white, the areas in white.
Okay. So you're talking 72,000, right? Everything is in order on this situation, correct? Right down the line,
Correct.
okay? So if we turned around and we eliminated the final 3 in the blue, okay, that brings us down to 67,000. Do we add the 18,000 that was next into it and bring it up to 85? So it's either, the question is, are we looking at 67 or 85 for going in order?
Joe gave a number of 72, so now I'm hearing,
I think we need to pick a number. I don't think we need to analyze the chart that Dan provided us. I think we need to pick a number and leave the work up to Dan and Municipal Services to decide. And like they said, even though people are in the blue, they still might walk away from it because the price has changed because their neighbors aren't supporting it. So I think to get this moving along, we need to say, what's the number? And right now, the number on the table for fiscal year '21, as proposed by Alderman Belzak, is $72,000 with a placeholder, preliminary of $36,000 for fiscal year '22. Do I have a consensus for that? Raise your hand. I got Tom, I got Lester, I got Ted. Okay, I got everybody except Eric, who wanted it eliminated.
That's correct.
Okay,
And what was that amount? I'm sorry.
so $72,000 for fiscal year '21 and $36,000 for fiscal year '22.
And after that?
I guess we'll put it in '23 too.
36.
36.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just doing a quick add on at 72, make sure.
I don't think you need to change the formula. I wouldn't bother changing the formula. Then. It took too long to arrive at the formula.
Yeah. Joe's attached to that formula.
The only way to change the formula is you take the final number and just cut it in half and split it. But then you're not really changing, you're changing the amount. But
And where does that leave us with the miscellaneous drainage projects of $20,000? I mean, is that, then that number just goes away and it's the 72, correct? Because you had,
the miscellaneous would stay in. Those are things above and beyond
Yeah.
these projects.
okay, okay.
Those are, for example,
When we get the
storm sewer
camera.
Okay, no, I just want
collapses.
clarity on that.
Yeah.
So we've got $72,000 in the budget for the drainage assistance project, and then we still have $20,000 in the budget for miscellaneous drainage projects. Everyone clear on that?
Wait, what's the 25,000 in the discretionary
Yeah.
drainage projects?
Yeah.
Yes, what's that? Item 30-4374. There was a maintenance amount of 20, and then there was a discretionary for 25.
Make it 25, subject to the 72.
Yeah, I mean, this
Where's
25
the
is now part of the
discretionary?
72.
I'm not seeing the discretionary.
It's-
right.
It's the far right
49.
column,
49,
Page 49 under the
page 49.
right in the middle,
You go all the way across.
contract services. Little shell games.
Let me look at my
It's an
budget.
accounting term.
Okay, did you see it,
I'll
Brian?
look, it's picking up around
Okay,
seven.
so right now, we're gonna say drainage projects assistance is 72,000, miscellaneous drainage projects is 20,000.
That's it.
Okay,
And we're getting rid
And
of the
and forget the
25.
and the
25K?
25 is gone.
Okay,
The
thank
25
you.
has now become 72.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. If it didn't come up in the detail, that's the Sterling Bay split.
Oh, okay.
What's that?
It
That's,
didn't, you know what, it did not show up in the, the other detail.
Okay.
But it should have been another line in there, and that's
Okay,
what that is.
so there's
But
another
Dan could cover that.
$25,000?
Right.
Is that the hookup, Dan, between the?
No, that's the actual, there's a drainage deficiency at the Public Works sites. That Public Works site
Sell
is
that
on the,
building.
I'm sorry?
Guess we'll have to sell that property then.
I agree. Let's not even talk about it.
Who
at
said
this
that,
point.
Eric?
Yes, Eric, number one fan
Troublemaker.
of that project.
That should be a great discussion.
So long story short is that this is a split cost between Sterling Bay and the city of Darien. 'Cause it's not really Sterling Bay's responsibility. It's probably more of our responsibility. We were able to negotiate this work that needs to be completed for stormwater and split it in half, basically.
Okay,
So basically, we're getting Sterling Bay to kick in 25K, right?
Sure, that's another way of putting it.
Is this something, if Sterling Bay wasn't there, is this something we would have had or not?
Well, it's been an ongoing problem, yes.
The drainage is along our back property line has always been bad, and it's come more to fruition now that we're taking all that Sterling Bay water that's being funneled, through their pavement into their retention areas is now coming our way, and it can't handle it. So the problem, because it's not pitched correctly, so their retention areas are going to back up and have problems draining.
So we're the downstream recipient is the bottom line. Downstream recipient by state law has to maintain and/or manage the flow.
And the ditch is not, I want to be clear, the ditch is not formed well now.
No, there's like a half concrete pipe on the bottom that's just not in good condition.
And Chris, we probably start storing now closer to that ditch too. I mean, it's more probably noticeable last few years.
Yes, we have borrowed the property from Sterling Bay over just to do
Yeah.
that.
So is the drainage like flowing towards the antenna at all and rusting it out?
No, but it's adjacent to it.
oh, okay.
It could back up to it. That's a good
Loosening
point.
the
Should
foundation.
we see if it qualifies
Maybe
for part of the
Sterling Bay would pay for the
72,000?
antenna.
Just don't
Or
let
in
it
the
go,
miscellaneous area?
just don't let it get near Old Lake
So
School.
far, we have comments on let it deteriorate. Maybe Sterling Bay will pay for it more, or
Dan, you can't use best practices.
Okay. So we've got Sterling Bay, $25,000 drainage project. We've got $72,000 for the drainage assistance project. And then we have $20,000 for the miscellaneous drainage projects. Correct?
perfect.
Okay. We are leaving drainage way behind. And we are moving on to tree trimming, $43.75. Any questions on the above? Well, we've got the asterisk by 1,750 trees being trimmed. There is backup for that.
Dan, on the $125 for the EAB, is this first of 3 years? Is that?
This is, at this point, it's one of 2 to 3 years, or it's one of no additional. I can't tell you that. Best that we've been told right now through through university and John Carr through some of the seminars that he's attended, that it's highly recommended that we at least provide this treatment. Whether there'll be additional treatments in 2 years, I can't answer that question right now.
For reference, for the tree trimming, look at page 82. For the EAB treatment maintenance of 1,896 trees, look at page 83. Any questions on those items? There was a request for a tree plotter software, which can be found on page 84, that was not recommended by Mr. Vanna.
Not Brian.
Now we got the nomenclature.
I got the groove going.
You got a question, Mary?
Yes, Tom.
Quick question, just what if you went 1 year and not trimmed the trees? Would it be that bad?
Devastating.
Really? Like how much growth do you get?
Well, put
Maybe
it-
6 inches to
What
a
we're
tree
doing, no, what we're
sideways?
doing is, just so everybody understands, the town is dissected into 5 sections.
Mm-hmm.
Those 5 sections, a section is done once every 5 years.
So we're not doing the whole town, we're just doing a section, okay. So theoretically, we're doing it once every 5 years. So maybe that was what I was getting at, is if we skipped a year tree trimming, if we're doing the whole town, we
Right.
skipped a year, okay, you
No.
got 3 inches of a branch.
Yes,
No,
no.
they,
Okay, got it.
At 5 years, I would not recommend doing any more than 5 years. I think the program has worked out very well. By the 5th year, we're starting to have garbage trucks, UPS trucks, plow trucks, just causing damage to the trucks.
Okay, no, that clarifies it.
any more questions on the tree trimming budget? Okay. We're going to move on then to residential concrete program. There is nothing budgeted.
Mayor, that is, we don't budget revenue expense. If people do it, it's a wash with the revenue. So we never budget anything in there,
Right.
but we'll still do that.
Okay, but it's still a line item. Okay. Capital purchases. Nothing under improvements. Moving on to equipment, 4815. There's a request for a pipe inspection camera. The backup for that can be found on page 85.
It's like the Mars rover.
That's exactly it. Thanks, Lester.
So the camera would cost $48,060.
The mayor mentioned with the camera, you might be able to spot other deficiencies in the pipe, so what if you don't get the camera, then will you not find other issues?
I mean, eventually they're going to show themselves.
Up earlier. You're gonna find more issues.
They
What
will,
you know, what you don't know won't kill
How
ya.
much the cost of the camera is gonna cost
no,
you?
but we could have situations such as McDonald's, again, there's $800,000 project.
Yeah, the water main.
And how much of it really is preventative? So if the cameras, if you're in a storm sewer, you're going to see something before it gets even worse and it becomes a bigger project. I mean,
That's
that's part of
exactly
what
it.
we
That's
talk
what this
about.
is, and there's opportunities with technology out there now. Let's say we were identify a 15-inch pipe. That 15-inch pipe is starting to rot. Well, we may not have to replace it because we can line it now with the technology that's out there. So there's a destructive method, the reactive method, or non-destructive.
Two-part question. Does any other surrounding municipalities own this kind of camera and this technology?
Couldn't tell you.
I would gather to guess yes.
Yes, yes.
And is there, it's,
Is there a way that we could, work hand in hand with them and use their camera for stuff like this? And if if nobody else has a camera around, and we do go ahead and purchase this, is there a way that we can make money, having our guys use a camera, but, charging the other municipalities around for use of it?
Maybe NASA could use it.
We haven't broached that, but it's a good point. I think we could ask around. I mean, it's, certainly if we had a truck for $500,000, it makes sense, but for $40,000, because we're not using it every day.
Right.
we could-
And I'll just
I don't-
go to
It's
the.
almost like it's almost like your tube cutter, we talked about earlier today.
Well, to go to that point, we use DuPage County for some of our sewer jetting and
Yeah,
Vector
truck.
services. The problem when you're relying on another entity that has their own work to do and not getting paid, going rate, is that it's hard to get them lined up when you need them. And so we will ask DuPage County. In some instances, they're very responsive and we can get them right away. And then there's other instances where we go back and forth for a couple of months in order to get them to come out and do some sewer jetting for us. So there's this trade-off of how fast do you need something done, and how long are you going to wait in order to get that service?
Because we're now part of the mayors and managers, and we're supposed to be one big happy family. Isn't there any way that we can turn around and talk to all the other?
I think he just
Right.
made a point, though, that you need to be aware of. Like, when we use the Vector truck, the cost of a Vector truck is $300,000.
Now it's $450.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's more economical to rent a Vector truck for a day or so. And those projects are probably far and few between where we need a Vector truck. But this camera might be something we need to use more often. If we have to wait on another municipality to get it, we may be dealing with overtime on our part or delaying projects. So I think there's a logic to getting it and having it. I think there's other things that we could look at in terms of this one big happy family rather than the camera.
No,
So,
but
Chris, this
Kenny,
is-
to your point, I recall similar situation that we had with a resident who constantly came back and said, "Why isn't this jetted yet?" That was a classic example of we were waiting for another municipality. I think it took about a month off of Allison Lane, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and again, in some instances, we call DuPage County middle of the night, and because you can't rent a Vector in the middle of the night when you need it in certain instances. So, and I'm not putting them down, and I truly understand that they're up against their own deadlines and their own projects and their own workload, and that's going to be the same for any other municipality. When you're calling out a contractor, that you pay, going rate, that cost is a lot more expensive. So,
Chris, I was originally thinking we would use it, for our routine maintenance inspection, so we'll plan it. But there is, when there's water backing up, we're going to use it too. The camera will work. So from that perspective, when I made my comments, I wasn't thinking of the emergency work.
I think
Just-
there
it
are,
was just
Joe,
a-
I
it
think
was just
there's
a-
legitimacy to what you're saying. But I think certain items, it's probably better to have the equipment. The Vector truck is a whole different story.
it's a different
Do
animal.
we get charged by DuPage County?
That's the problem. I keep telling Chris, in order to prove up that we need a Vector truck, it's a handshake.
We considered buying a Vector truck a number of years ago when it was about $250,000.
We got no place, but we've got no place to store it.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, to Eric's
Again, to
question.
your point.
What you did we answer Eric's question?
No.
Sometimes we get billed.
Yeah, do we get billed by DuPage County?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's hard. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason.
I've actually seen it. There's been times where the truck's been in a neighborhood and you guys have been they've stopped to help you guys out.
Yeah.
And then Dan's looking for a bill and they're not giving it to him.
Yeah, and again,
Well, they
we
will now
appreciate
if they're
that, but
watching on
yeah.
the
Good.
TV.
Yeah, that's our best kept secret here.
Yeah.
Tom has a question.
Just really quickly, a few years ago, I remember on municipal services, I thought we bought a camera. It was like a really expensive one for.
We
for
bought that drop camera that I referenced earlier. It's the problem with the drop camera is it's the camera head is on a pole. So you drop the pole down into the storm sewer, you're limited on distance that you can see. So this camera is actually going to go ahead and crawl in the pipe and give you better picture.
And what we have is for manhole inspections, basically, to see, grouting.
Yeah. Okay. And you can see some of the pipe, but again, you're limited depending on how far manholes are. Different instances. This other camera is going to actually go ahead and crawl along into the camera.
What's the minimum size that you need? 12 inches for that thing to. Looks sort of big.
You know what
I was curious.
I thought it
I
was
think
10.
it tells me.
Okay, so that's
It says 6 to 12 inches.
6 okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, you're not the 4-inch pipes and are few and far behind. Are far between. Those are mostly a lot of any 4-inch pipe we're going to find is going to be like undersized pipes and rear yard drainage systems that we're replacing. So
Interior systems that aren't utilized with 4-inch anymore.
Can I ask?
Any more questions on equipment? There's also a storm jetter, an end loader bucket payload that there's backup for, truck number 502.
And that's
We have
split with the
backup?
water department, right?
Yeah, one half.
Yep.
Yeah.
An end loader.
All this backup can be found on pages 88, 89, 90, 91.
And we're not budgeting for the storm jetter. Correct.
Mr. Vanna took
Right,
it out.
storm jetter is not in there.
Yeah.
Turning the page to 50, there's a trailer for 5,800.
The trailer was bought in 1974.
I knew that was coming.
It's almost as old as me.
It doesn't have the relevance it used to.
That's true. That's a good point.
Oh, Lester and Tom look pretty young. I bet
It's
probably older than them.
That's a
Okay.
running joke.
was that?
but
74.
74.
Joe and I have been count
1 year
together.
later.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Okay.
We'll tell that story some other time.
We also have a water trailer, Caterpillar mini excavator, which is not in the budget, but a cat plow is. That backup on all of that can be found, I'm sorry, in subsequent pages. Any questions about any more of the equipment items under budget 4815, account number? Okay, if there's no objection, I'm going to move on to item number 4890, purchase of property with no budget.
Oh, that was a mistake.
That was the Public Works side I scratched, so we can get into that now. Are we ready? No, I'm just kidding. It's not.
We're ready for that now.
Dan, is he coming next Tuesday?
Again, yeah, I was just gonna mention that. He's
Architect.
scheduled for next Tuesday. In conjunction with that, we did receive an offer for our property, but I'll forward that email tomorrow to the mayor and Brian for further action. Mr. Vanna. No, I'll be Brian.
No, Brian, there's money coming in, not money going out. It's Brian.
Well, next week we will have the architect here to talk to us, so we'll be discussing that. I maybe should bring dinner. And then we will then conclude tonight the municipal services streets budget. Next week, we'll be talking about capital projects. And then we'll be moving on to the enterprise fund, water fund revenue, water fund budget, water depreciation fund.
And
This can be done real
I'd have just a handout if everybody would like to
On the funds?
take a copy. It's just the MFT and the special service areas funds for the next meeting.
Pass it around.
Okay, so Brian Van is going to be handing us out some stuff, and that also can be found on the website, Brian?
We'll put it on after tonight, so we're going to
Okay.
put that on for the next meeting.
Okay. It's being passed around. Okay. Are there any other questions about what was discussed tonight? Okay. If so, I'm going to adjourn the Administrative Finance Committee of a whole meeting for Tuesday, February 25th at 10:19. We will resume on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020 at 6:30 back here in council chambers. Thank you, everybody, for riding it out tonight. Good night.
Yeah, nice job, folks.